A prosperous land of spiritual bliss is rapidly turning into ruins. Countless disciples in the blessed land of spiritual emptiness who were still alive are rapidly turning into dead bodies. Some disciples in the Holy Land who wanted to escape were no faster than those martial spirit puppets. Thousands of miles around the Holy Land, the fire of war is burning everywhere. More than 2,000 martial spirit puppets are no longer a collective large-scale battle, but in groups of 3 or 5, wantonly destroying the Holy Land. Such a combination is still invincible. Because they are not afraid of attack, because they are powerful, because they have Huafan stone treasure clothes. At this time, many Qingming blessed land disciples have stopped shouting and suffering. They just quietly look at the scenes in front of them, but there are still tears in their eyes. Yi Tian. Madman, your time of death has come today. Suddenly, a voice like thunder exploded in the sky. Then high above the sky, a circle of ripples emerged, from which a thin figure appeared. Qing'anzi, Yi Tian has been waiting for you for a long time. Seeing this person appear, Yi Tian cleaned up and moved. There were mountain and river seals, which suddenly became larger and turned into the size of 40 or 50 mu, covering the peak and protecting many disciples on the peak. Master, he is the heavenly palace. When the thin Qing'anzi appeared, a disciple suddenly exclaimed, but there was no sound before he finished speaking. Many disciples of Qingming blessed land were shocked to find that when the huge seal appeared, they had lost their ability to act in an instant and could not even say a word. Small skills. Qing'anzi in the sky snorted coldly. A flying sword in his hand burst out and cut down towards the mountains and rivers. Yi Tian drives the mountain and river seal, does not retreat but advances, and greets the flying sword. When the original magic weapon attack enters the range of about 10 feet of Shanhian, it will become slow or even stop under the suppression of the gravity field. However, the Qing'anzi came with great anger and made a full attack. The terror of his attack is by no means comparable to that of any friar who fought with Yi Tian in the past. The terrible flying sword broke through the 10-foot range of mountain and river seal in an instant, and continued to quickly cut to mountain and river seal. After flying the sword, Qing'anzi's figure flashed and followed. Yi Tian's eyes coagulated slightly and stared at the fast-approaching person and sword. He needed to judge the impact of the power of mountain and river seal on the power of Tiangong territory. Finally, at the next breath, he took a long breath. While the flying sword quickly cut into the mountains and rivers, it also slowed down rapidly. Even the great friars in the heavenly palace couldn't get rid of the repression of mountains and rivers. However, Yi Tian had been in contact with the great friars in the heaven palace before and knew the horror of the friars in this realm, so he had no contempt in his heart. The sudden change in the current situation also made him more cautious. It's strange here. Qing'anzi suddenly flew up again. When he felt the bondage of the gravity field, he had exerted strong magic power to break through the bondage of the gravity field. At any time, a terrible magic power was issued. The flying sword that had been suppressed by the mountain river seal gravity field was called back by him out of thin air. In this case, Yi Tian's heart moved and sent a command to the golden eye god carving at the top of the peak, and then controlled the mountains and rivers to fly to the sky. The speed of mountain and river seal is fast, and the speed of Qing'anzi is faster. With a flash of body shape, he has reached the high altitude. Yi Tian, your growth rate is really beyond my expectation. However, if you want to fight with me with this magic weapon, you can't do it. If I don't believe it, you can always let go of this magic weapon. The mountain in the sky, Qing'anzi said with a sinister look in his eyes, and then his body flashed and went away towards the distance. All disciples enter the cave. Although Yi Tian resisted the attack of Denung Qing'anzi in the heavenly palace with his mountain and river seal, he was very unhappy. It's not that his Shanhian is not scary enough, but that Qing'anzi's cultivation realm and strength are too strong to give Shanhian a chance to get close to repression. Qing'anzi's speed is very fast. For a moment, he has no chance to practice hidden killing. The most important thing is that this person can move greatly, and these disciples who are still at the top of the peak are their own weaknesses. In the eyes of these disciples, Shifu's fight with the great power of the heavenly palace turned out to be a tie. Such a situation naturally shocked them. Knowing that they were watching the war, some of them made the master throw away the mouse, so they rose all their strength and quickly returned to the cave. Meanwhile, Tian also showed more than a dozen cloud photographers to send those disciples who did not change their actions into the cave. Master, I'm sorry, I haven't had time to use Hui's bow. At this time, the carving girl said to Tian with apology. It has nothing to do with you. He is too powerful. After all, he is powerful in the heavenly palace. He can't take it lightly. Tian replied with a gesture, narrowed the magic weapon and put it away in the cave. Then he stepped on the flying sword and chased in the direction of Qing'anzi. Dozens of miles away, a group of martial spirit puppets are attacking wantonnly around Qing'anzi. Their attack can be described as very powerful. However, at this time, Qing'anzi had found the strangeness of these puppets, and did not give the Wuhuan puppets a chance to get close at all. Under a long distance, Huathan's stone clothes naturally lose its effect. He saw Qing'anzi, then waved and played a magnificent magic power. Before he got close, more than a dozen half-step spirit puppets were lifted out more than 10 feet away and tossed back in the air. Then there was another wave, and a dozen martial spirit puppets on the other side were also lifted up. Not to mention that, as soon as Qing'anzi pinched the hand formula, a half-step god's martial soul puppet was seized and fixed 3 feet in front of him by a big hand transformed by a magic power. The powerful mind immediately erased the mind mark left by Tian, and then laid his own mind mark. Then, Qing'anzi manipulated the martial spirit puppet and launched an attack on his companions. Ha ha! Tian, what are those disciples? Are you here to send treasure? Qing'anzi in the sky laughed at Tian, who was flying closer and closer. Then he flashed and went to another place. The 2 big hands of mana grabbed a martial soul puppet and directly sent it to his Shumi ring. Tian. After all, you are not the original Dante. These means are useless to me. Qing'anzi laughed again and grabbed the 2 martial spirit puppets with his big hand, talking with mana again. At this time, a bowstring sound suddenly sounded behind Qing'anzi, and a terrible dark shadow shot at his back in a flash. Then Hui's arrow was sent out by the invisible carving girl, but Qing'anzi disappeared out of thin air, and the terrible arrow fell into thin air. When he reappeared, he was already in the invisible position before the carving girl. He was fast, but the carving girl knew that her body was exposed. Under the display of Tianling Wing, he had reached the air 10 miles away, and the Hui arrow shot by her was called back. Sure enough, there is a way. Qing'anzi snorted coldly, ignoring the carving girl, but looked at Tian holding the mountain and river seal in his hand. Dante! Tian! You are a joke in front of me. You want to take revenge with a few magic weapons? I'll make you regret returning to the square-inch spirit realm today. If you are on the Earth Star, I may not be able to help you. Today is your time of death, and all the treasures you say will belong to me? Qing'anzi laughed and pinched the hand formula, and a giant dragon transformed by magic hit Tian. Tian's figure flashed and disappeared out of thin air in an instant. With the same body shape, Qing'anzi has reached the high altitude tens of miles away. As a great power in the heavenly palace, he has sensed the horror of the mountain and river seal, so he will never give Tian a chance to get close. As soon as Qing'anzi showed his figure, he moved several times in succession. He flashed several places in the air. In an instant, he had changed 6 or 7 positions and formed nearly 1,000 miles. After such an action, he believed that Tian could never track himself, so he let go of his mind and looked for Tian's trace. When he just let go of his mind, he suddenly looked up, then his body flashed again and flew away. Qing'anzi's speed is not fast, but the speed of mountain and river printing seems to be faster. In an instant, it had flown close, more than 10 times faster than before. At that time, it shrouded Qing'anzi under the gravity field. Qing'anzi suddenly sank all over, as if he fell into a sticky mud, and his action became much slower. In this case, Qing'anzi was shocked and then performed the great movement but it was impossible to perform it because of the suppression of the gravity field. At this time, Tian suddenly appeared not far away. Tian, you. Feeling Tian's terrible smell of Denang approaching the heavenly palace, Qing'anzi suddenly had a bad feeling. Qing'anzi, you said he would explode you. The revenge of Qingming blessed land has just begun. You are the first. When Yi Tian finished, the fierce flying sword in his hand burst out a strong sword light and cut more than a dozen swords to Qing'anzi. Boom! Boom! Each sword made a powerful roar. In a burst of screams, Qing'anzi and his detached Yuan god Jin were cut to pieces by the fierce soldier's flying sword. Blood and broken meat fell down one after another. The ghost mask on Yi Tian's face also fell. Yi Tian reached out to take it, directly took out a drop of fortune liquid wrapped in medicine film and put it into his mouth. With a bang, Yi Tian almost recovered half of his exhausted mana. With a cruel heart, Yi Tian took out a drop again and quickly sent it to the entrance. This time, Yi Tian completely recovered his peak state. With his increasing mana, the mana recovery provided by a drop of fortune liquid has been greatly reduced in front of him. Yi Tian looked at the face mask in his hand. After this use, it was full of cracks, as if it could be broken at any time. Although it's a little painful and consumes only one chance to use it, it's worth killing Qing'anzi. Master! You just... At this time, as soon as the carving girl holding Hou Yi's bow flew to Yi Tian, the shocked expression on her face had not completely calmed down. It's just a great power in the heavenly palace. He dares to be arrogant in front of Yi. Without using some means, he thought he was invincible from now on. Yi Tian didn't explain. He just snorted coldly, moved and flew down. When he was about to reach the ground, he motioned and moved an amputated limb mixed with flesh and blood fragments into his hand. Take off the Shumi ring on his finger, and Yi Tian flexes his finger and bounces the amputated limb out of sight. Glancing around, Yi Tian gave an instruction to those martial spirit puppets who stayed in the air to continue to destroy the Holy Land. And he put the brand of divine thoughts on the Shumi ring of Qing'anzi, and the divine thoughts penetrated into it. There are countless treasures inside. Before Yi Tian could count them carefully, he took the lead in releasing several martial soul puppets captured by Qing'anzi. One of the martial spirit puppets erased the mark of the divine mind, but with the fall of Qing'anzi, the mark of the divine mind on it has disappeared. Yi Tian once again branded his mind and let the martial spirit puppet rejoin the battle. Just as he was about to check the other things in Zumaji, he suddenly looked and took out a white ball. Lao Zu! Lao Zu! Do you hear me? There is an abnormal situation in the Ming clan. It seems that it is going to launch a general attack on the Maitreya Palace. How should the disciples take advantage of this opportunity? A deep man's voice came from the ball. Hearing this news, Yi Tian was shocked. He didn't expect the action of the Ming clan to be so fast. If he really launched a general attack, I'm afraid the problem of the Maitreya Palace is not big, but the Chinese people are going to suffer. At the thought of this, his face became particularly ugly. Grandpa, do you hear me? Please show me. The man's voice continued to come from the white ball. Yi Tian looked at the ball in his hand, input the mana gently, imitated Qing'anzi's voice and said, temporarily stop all actions to the Maitreya Palace, try every means to get 10,000 bones of Mingxiu, and then send them back to the Blessed Land. It's of great use here. Lao Zu, 10,000. I'm afraid it's hard, the voice in the white ball came out again. This is a death order. If you can't do it, you don't have to come back. Pay attention and report the war situation there at any time. Yi Tian made a furious voice, and then threw the white ball back into Zumaji. Standing in the air meditating for a few seconds, Yi Tian thought a little, mobilized more than 200 martial spirit puppets, stopped chasing the disciples of Lingshu Blessed Land, and rushed to the valley where the space channel was located. Then he gestured continuously, took out 2 magic weapons, and fell on the ground at one time. Lin Daoyu, ear. Come out and meet. With the prohibition on the magic weapon gate closed, Yi Tian passed his voice in. Soon, Ear and Linzwa came out of their cave. What is this? Ear and Linzwa were confused when they looked at the surrounding environment and the crazy killing scenes of many soulless puppets in the distance. This is the blessed land of spiritual emptiness. The old ancestor Qing'anzi has been killed by me. The blessed land of spiritual emptiness is famous from the spiritual realm. Can you two contact the temple? Now the situation of Earthstar is critical, we need to rescue the disciples of the temple and return to Earthstar immediately. Yi Tian put away the 2 Dharma treasure caves and said quickly. Ah, Qing'anzi was killed by the elder Dante? Linzhou was stunned when he heard Yi Tian say so. Ear looked at Linzhou in vain and muttered, "What's the fuss? Who does brother Yi Tian want to kill and who can run away? I'd better contact my mother." As she spoke, Ear gestured and took out a messenger from Shumi Ring. Under the urging of Mana, she quickly said, "Mom, I'm your little baby, Ear. Brother Yi Tian and I are now in the blessed land of spiritual emptiness. Brother Yi Tian has killed Qing'anzi and destroyed the blessed land of spiritual emptiness. Please come and meet me. If you are in trouble, Brother Yi Tian and I will pick you up at your mother's house." After that, Ear inspired a Mana again, and the messenger ignited a flame and turned into ashes. Listen to Ear, Yi Tianman has a black line in his head. What's the reason to go back to his mother's house? Where's your mother's family involved? Brother Yi Tian, am I right? At this time, Ear raised her head and looked at Yi Tian with big eyes. Accurate. Very accurate. Yi Tian shook his head and smiled bitterly. At this time, Ear looked a little moved and took out a piece of news symbol from Shumi Ring again. Inside, there came the anxious voice of the temple lord. Ear, did you fall into the hands of Qing'anzi? And did the Dan Emperor fall into his hands? Qing'anzi is in the heavenly palace. How could he be killed by Yi Tian? Moreover, he has just returned to the blessed land of spiritual emptiness. Did Qing'anzi force you to say it? Qing'anzi is the heavenly palace. Hearing the message, Ear looked at Yi Tian in shock. Of course, I've entered the heavenly palace, otherwise I wouldn't be so surprised. Linzhou said, now, the Hall Lord doesn't believe you. Brother Yi Tian, you killed the heavenly palace. It's so adorable. Would. Ear said in surprise and made a sound. Then she took out another messenger, made a face and said to Yi Tian, my mother has always been cautious. It's normal to have doubts. It doesn't matter. Look at me. My mother will be here soon. Well, trust you again. If it doesn't work, I'll talk to the temple lord myself. Yi Tian nodded and agreed. At the same time, he issued instructions to those martial spirit puppets to speed up the process of destroying the Holy Land. Ear took out a messenger again. After urging, she issued a panic cry, ah. No. No. Ah. Nyan. Just a few words, and then sent it out. Yi Tian and Linzhou looked at each other and looked at each other. Is this operation still done by people? What if the people in the temple are hiding somewhere, they don't contact each other and can't respond in time, and the Lord of the temple reveals his whereabouts in a hurry and encounters danger again? This girl is pure strength pit mother. An idea flashed through him, his body soared in the air, let go of his mind, covered the surrounding area of 100,000 miles, and observed carefully. A moment later, he suddenly raised his eyebrows and said to Ear, I see your mother. She is moving towards this side. Do you think what to say? Hey, I said Brother Yi Tian bullied me. Ear stuck out his tongue and smiled. Yi Tian stared and was about to scold Ear. But Ear put away her smiling expression and said solemnly, Brother Yi Tian, I'm joking. I said before that there was a blood connection between me and my mother. After sending the first messenger, I felt that the distance between me and my mother was shrinking rapidly. That just shows that my mother has come here. Even if I don't send the second messenger, my mother will still come. Besides, I won't tell my mother about your bullying me. Hey! Ear, how can I? Yi Tian immediately appeared to clarify that it's nothing to be naughty at ordinary times, but Linzhou is here. He's from the temple. If it really reaches the ears of the Lord of the temple, who will Dante Yi Tian become? Is he a man with a great soul? If you don't tell your mother will know. Just before Yi Tian finished his words, suddenly the voice of the temple lord came from the sky, followed by a burst of aura ripples, and the temple lord in palace clothes showed his figure. Mother! Seeing the lord of the temple, Ear's body flashed, greeted him in the high air and rushed directly into the arms of the lord of the temple. You smelly girl, I was scared to death just now. The lord of the temple stroked Ear's hair and his eyes were full of the glory of maternal love. As he fell down, he said, "It's a miracle that you have reached the peak of Longmen territory in more than a year. You know, Ear just broke through the sea-viewing realm after leaving the square-inch spiritual realm. Now, he can condense the golden elixir only one step away. This speed is really unimaginable." When the Temple Lord sensed Ear's realm, he was greatly shocked. By herself, the Lord of the Temple knew it was absolutely impossible. Then, there is only Tian. Of course, the Tiger Mother has no dog daughter. Ear keeps practicing day and night and doesn't dare to delay for a moment. Ear said with a smile. The Lord of the Temple naturally didn't believe it. He doted on Ear, came to Tian, made an inspection and said, "Yi Daoyu is safe. The Temple Lord is well." Tian nodded slightly and asked, "Can other disciples of the temple escape?" "There is a slight loss, but the elites are still there. Now they are all in a safe place," the Lord of the Temple said concisely. Then he glanced at the mess of spiritual bliss below and asked, "Qingyan's son was killed by Yi Daoyu?" Tian smiled and nodded, "Yes, this man attacked Yi, and you must blame this man." Although the Lord of the Temple had observed the situation in the Holy Land through his mind on the way, and vaguely guessed that what El said might be true, he still had a lot of doubts in his heart. She also sensed Tian's current state. A year ago, Tian was still in Longmen state, but a year later, he broke through to Yuanying state. In this regard, Tian is very human. It is precisely because Tian's realm has improved so quickly, and Ear is the same, that she is sure that Tian's cultivation and entry into the country must be the credit of Tian. But guess belongs to guess. Now hearing Tian's personal confirmation, the Temple Lord immediately surged up in his heart. With the cultivation of Yuanying territory, kill the great power of Tiangong territory. Even if others say it to her 10,000 times, or 10,000 people say it, she will never believe it. However, Ear is here, Lin Zui is here, and Tian wantonly retaliates against Lingshu blessed land. King Ganzi hurried back here before, but he disappeared. All this can only show that Lingshu ancestor really fell into the hands of Tian in Yuanying territory. The Taoist friends of the Red Emperor have great powers, which Yan Yunyang admires. It is precisely because of this that they saved the disciples of the temple. At that time, the people of the 8th sects were about to find our hiding place, but King Suzi suddenly left. After a while, the people of the other 8 sects also left in a hurry and went their own way. Now I think it was because Taoist Yi killed the Holy Land feeling. I think the others must have received the herald and left after getting the news. Otherwise, I'm afraid the temple will suffer heavy losses. Please accept Yan Yunyang's courtesy for such great kindness from the Taoist friends of the Dan Emperor. After confirming the matter of Qingyanzi, the Lord of the Temple looked solemn and bowed to Tian. In this world, the strong are respected. Even though Tian still has only the cultivation of Yuanying territory, he can still kill the monks of Tiangong territory. This is the strong, and he will win respect and even awe. So that the Lord of the Temple declared his name to Tian this time. "Lord Yan, don't be polite." Tian said with empty hands, "I captured a disciple of the Holy Land on the Earth Star. I learned that Qingyanzi had broken through to the Heaven Palace, and the temple was in a critical situation. Since the temple was chased and killed by the 8 sects because he sent someone to Earthstar to protect the Miro Palace, how could ye stand idly by? So he came to help me with Lin Daoyu and Ear. But I just learned that the underworld on the Earthstar is likely to launch an all-round advance to our Miro Palace attack, so we have to hurry back this time. I was going to kill all Ya's enemies this time, because it can only make them live a few more days. If Yin Daoyu has nothing to do in Fengsuan spirit domain, you might as well take the temple disciples with ye to Earthstar. When the Earthstar crisis is eliminated, you will kill Yin Daoyu again, and then it will be the time for Qingming blessed land to take revenge. Okay, mother. Promise quickly. In that case, mother can often see Ear, and Ear can often see mother. Anyway, Ear depends on brother Tian and won't go. Before the temple lord Yan Yunyang makes a decision, Ear jumped up with joy. Although Qingyanzi was killed by Tian, and Lingshu Blessed Land was also killed by Tian in a mess, Yan Yunyang knew that the elite power of Lingshu Blessed Land had not been completely destroyed, and the strong people who followed Qingyanzi to search the temple were still outside. Plus the power of the other 7 sects. If Tian leaves here, the situation of the temple is still very dangerous. Since Tian sent out the invitation, Yen Yunyang did feel something in her heart. Although she also heard that what Yi Tiangang just said meant to fight the underworld with the help of the power of the temple, it was not impossible. However, she said with a little meditation, Yen Yunyang is willing to take the temple disciples to Earthstar, but as far as I know, the space channel of Lingshu Blessed Land is not stable. If the monks above Yuanying territory pass through, it is likely to cause the channel collapse. The last time they entered Earthstar from the space channel of Qingming Blessed Land, the channel collapse has been very dangerous. Since the Taoist friends of the Dan Emperor sent this invitation, there are other channels to return to Earthstar? No, you'd better go to the Earthstar from the space channel of the Holy Land, but Yi has a way to help you pass safely. That's Yen Dao Yu. Please look at this carving, friend, who came with Yi. Yi Tian smiled and pointed to the divine carving. In this way, I don't have any worries, but there are more than 24,000 disciples in the temple, who are hiding somewhere underground 80,000 miles away from here. The disciples have different accomplishments and uneven speed. If there is no accident on the way, it will take 3 days. Will this delay the great event of the Taoist friends of the Dan Emperor? Yen Yunyang hesitated. 3 days? Yi Tian frowned. Not to mention 3 days, even 1 day, he would not wait. After a little meditation, he said, I have a magic weapon cave here. Yen Daoyu can let the temple disciples enter the magic weapon cave and bring it over. Taoist friend of the Red Emperor, although the temple disciples are not very powerful, there are more than 20,000 people. Originally, there were 3 magic weapons in the temple, but they are not enough. Moreover, if the great friars of Yupu territory in the temple perform the large-scale movement one by one, it will not only take a lot of time, but also be dangerous due to the excessive dispersion of power. The lord of the temple thought Yi Tian didn't understand the number of temple disciples she just said, so he explained patiently. Mom, it's not a problem. Brother Yi Tian has more than 1,000 magic weapons. Just take dozens for you. At this time, Ear suddenly interrupted. How could it be? How could there be more than 1,000 magic weapon caves? There are not 100 magic weapon caves in the square-inch spirit domain. Ear, are you mistaken? Yen Yunyang, the lord of the temple, asked in a daze. Yes, the magic weapon cave. Yi still carries some with him. If Yen Daoyu needs it, you will give 100 temples. After all, even if you arrive at the Earthstar, the temple disciples also need a place to live. Yi Tian said with a smile. Moreover, I also have 2 magic weapons caves with twice the time field, which are also given to Yen Daoyu. The time flow in this cave is twice as fast as the outside world, which is 1 day for the outside world, and 2 days for the inside of the cave. Yen Daoyu can also enjoy twice the time by placing the magic weapons cave with temple disciples in this cave with twice the time field. There is such a magical magic weapon cave? Yen Yunyang immediately understood the magic of this magic weapon cave and said in amazement. Ear took Yen Yunyang's arm and smiled. Mom, what's the magic? Ear has been practicing in the field with 3 times the time and tight flow rate. Now, the magic weapon cave where Ear lives is the magic weapon cave in the river basin with 5 times the time newly refined by the Maitreya Palace. In the future, he may be able to refine a magic weapon cave with 10 times and 20 times the time and flow rate. 5 times the time flow rate? Yen Yunyang was stunned again and asked Yi Tian, Dan Di Taoist friend, what Ear said is true. Yi Tian smiled and nodded, what Ear said is right. After arriving at the Earthstar, Yi can also give the magic weapon cave with 5 times the flow rate of time to the temple. This time, he came in a hurry and only brought a 5 times the field of time. That's too precious. Yen Yunyang said so, but her eyes showed an indelible color of joy. When she sat in the position of the hallmaster, she naturally knew what the magic weapon cave in the field 5 times the time meant to the temple. Yen Daoyu, the time is urgent. Let's act separately. If he needs to meet him, you will follow him. At this time, Yi Tian stopped talking and said in his mouth. He was already closing his hand, took out 100 magic weapons cave and put them on the ground. Don't bother Yi Daoyu. There are 5 great friars in Yupu territory in the temple, and the people of the 8 sects have dispersed. It is estimated that some sects have begun to move and take refuge. How dare you find trouble in the temple again? There are still many things here. Taoist friends of the Dan Emperor should take charge of the overall situation here. Yen Yunyang said, waved her robe sleeve, put away 100 magic treasures in the cave, and then pulled Linzua, disappeared from the original place and ignored Ear. Ear, hurry into the cave. At this time, Yi Tian frowned and released his magic weapon. After the cave, he urged him. Seeing this, Ear knew that something must have happened and immediately jumped into the magic weapon cave. At this time, the divine carving has turned into a body and waited aside. Yi Tian put away his magic weapon in the cave and jumped onto the carving back. Without Yi Tian's orders, the divine carving had already fluttered its wings and disappeared from its original place. At the next moment, the divine carving appeared at the entrance of the space passage thousands of miles away from here. Outside the field shield that has been reopened here, 200 Wuhuan puppets sent by Yi Tian to guard the space channel are waiting. More than 10 miles away, a middle-aged man is standing in the low sky, looking at the field shield and Wuhuan puppets. I don't know what he is thinking. Taoist Morong, are you interested in Yes Puppet? Yi Tian jumped down from the back of the carving, looked at the man and passed his voice far away. It's a pleasure to meet you, Dante. I didn't expect that Dante was reborn. In just a few years, he could kill Qing'anzi, a great power in the Heavenly Palace, which is really admired by Morong Jun. The man's appearance is quite elegant, with 3 strands of black whiskers and looks like a fairy spirit. He arched his hand to Yi Tian. Taoist Morong didn't come here just to say these words? Yi Tian bowed back calmly. Yi Tian naturally met this person in his previous life, but he had no friendship, just acquaintance. At that time, Yi Tian was the leader of Qingning Blessed Land, but he was the leader of Shueiyue sect. He was also a great monk in Yupu territory. Morong Jun moved and slowly flew to Yi Tian. When he was 3 or 4 feet away from Yi Tian, he stopped and said, Morong Jun didn't know that he had these origins with the Dan Emperor before, but he has known recently. The Dan Emperor is actually the Earth Star surname, and the ancestral home of Situ Jun and the disciples of the Shueiyue sect is also the Earth Star. Yi Tian nodded slightly. Yi also knew this not long ago. He also knew that when the Earth Star disaster came, the ancestors of the Earth Star Mercury Moon sect left the Water Moon cave and roamed the stars. They were separated halfway. The ancestors of your sect came to Fangkunling domain and hit the door of the Water Moon sect. Moreover, your disciples always recognized Earth Star as the ancestor star and thought that they could return to the ancestor star one day, right or wrong? Morong Jun was stunned, looked at Yi Tian suspiciously, and then said, How did the Dan Emperor know? This matter is secret, and no outsiders know it. Yi Tian smiled and said, Naturally, I heard from the descendants of the ancestors of Shueiyue sect. In those days, the ancestors of Shueiyue sect were separated from the sky, and some of them went to Fengsuan spiritual realm. What Morong Taoist friends didn't know is that the other part was to a place called Rose spiritual realm, which also founded a Shueiyue sect. When he crossed the void, he met the friars of Shueiyue sect, who told me about it. By the way, that in Shueiyue sect, there are also several friars with Morong as their surname. Maybe you are the same ancestor. And such things? The book left by our ancestors did record the loss of the stars, but our ancestors thought that the lost fellow disciples had lost their lives in the void, but they didn't expect it. They went elsewhere and founded the Water Moon sect. Yi Dao Yu, where is the Rose spiritual realm and how can we get there? Morong Jun said thoughtfully, stroking his black beard. Yi Tian shook his head slightly and said, Taoist Morong doesn't have to go to the spirit realm of Rose. All the disciples of Shueiyue sect there have followed Yi to Earthstar, and now they are fighting against Mingxiu. Taoist Morong can go to Earthstar if they want to trace their ancestors and find their source. Yes. Morong Jun sighed lightly and said, Dandy, it's true. Although he is in the square-inch spiritual domain, the disciples of Shueiyue sect are the ancestors of the heart. I wanted to go back to the ancestors long ago, but Shueiyue sect also has some enemies. I'm afraid it's bad for the Earthstar to expose this matter. Moreover, Shueiyue sect doesn't control the space channel. It's difficult to go back. Morong Jun also negotiated with Anzi about the space channel of Lingshu Blessed Land, but this man regarded himself highly and gave no false color to Shueiyue's own silk, but Benzong was inconvenient to turn against it. This time I learned that Qing'anzi had been killed by the Dan Emperor and the Holy Land had been destroyed. Morong Jun wanted to take this opportunity to take advantage of the space channel to send some disciples back to Zuxing and help Taoist friends fight against Mingxiu. It was time for the life and death of Zuxing, and all the previous scruples could not be taken into account. So it is. Thank you, Taoist Morong. Yi Tian was surprised to hear what he said, so he bowed his hands and said, now all the disciples of the temple will go to Earthstar with Yin Daoyu. In addition, the disciples of Shueiyue's sect should have more chances of winning against Mingxiu. The lord of the temple took all his disciples to Earthstar? Hearing the speech, Morong Jun was stunned. He glanced at the defense shield of the space channel and asked, Dante has a way to let the high-level friars pass through the space channel? Yi Tian smiled and nodded, yes, there is a way. How sure? Morong Jun asked. 10%. Yi Tian replied calmly. If it's true, as Emperor Dan said, Shueiyue's sect is willing to use its power to go to the Earth Star and protect the ancestral star. Morong Junlu said. Well, Morong Taoist friend is in a foreign country and still cares about the ancestral star. His zone goes through difficulties, which is really admired by Yi. The combination of the Maitreya Palace, the temple and the Shueiyue sect against the underworld will surely protect the Earth Star. Yi Tian said happily. There are more than 20,000 disciples in the temple. Yi gave Yin Daoyu 100 magic weapon caves. As he knows, Shueiyue sect should have more than 10,000 disciples. Yi will give you 60 magic weapon caves so that his zone can return to Zuxing. As he spoke, Yi Tian gestured, and 60 magic weapons appeared in front of Morong Jun so much? Looking at those magic weapons in the cave, Morong Jun was stunned and sighed, it's the Dante in the end. Even if he is reborn, it's extraordinary. Morong Taoist friend, with the latest news, it is likely that the Pluto will launch a comprehensive offensive against the Earth Star, so the temple will act quickly and prepare to make preparations in the shortest time and follow Yi into the Earth Star from the space channel. Seeing Morong Jun's situation, Yi Tiankai said. Morong Jun immediately understood that Yi Tian was urging himself. At present, he did not neglect it. With a gesture, he put away the magic weapons in the cave, hugged his fist and said, Don't worry, Dante. Morong Jun immediately summoned the disciples under the door, informed the disciples outside to return to the sect immediately, and tried to meet them as soon as possible. After that, he moved and disappeared from his place, leaving only a circle of aura ripples in the sky slowly dispersing. Divine carving. Morong Jun said hello. Master. The vulture girl was secretly surprised at this time, and she admired Yi Tian more and more. In less than half a day, Yi Tian even brought 2 reinforcements for Earthstar. If both the temple and Shueiyue sect went to Earthstar to fight, the strength of the Maitreya Palace would increase sharply. After all, although she didn't know the strength of Shueiyue sect, Morong Jun was a real monk in Yupu territory. In addition, according to the lord of the temple, there are 5 great friars in Yupu territory in the temple, which is absolutely a terrible force. You are here to guard the space passage with the martial spirit puppet, and you must not lose. After Yi Tianfen gave an instruction, he stepped on the fierce soldier's flying sword and fled to the Holy Land. At this time, in the deep underground of a mountain peak more than 80,000 miles away from Lingshu Blessed Land, there is a huge underground cave, in which secret roads are staggered like a spider's web. In the cave, in a huge stone chamber, Yen Yunyang was talking with several monks, and Lin Zhuo of the temple was suddenly listed. Yen Yunyang was saying, that's the case. It can be confirmed that Qing'anzi was indeed killed by the Dan Emperor, so I decided to return to the Earth Star with him. In this way, we can avoid hard contact with the several sects and let the temple have a good rest. A friar with a short beard nearby heard the speech and looked at Lin Zhuo with a little meditation. Lin Zhuo, your time on the Earth Star is not short. What is the strength of Mingxiu on the Earth Star? What is the situation of the war between the Mira Palace and Mingxiu? Elder, although I have been to the Earth Star for a long time, I have been in the Maitreya Palace to help fight against the coming monks of several other sects, and I have never met with another monk. Moreover, after the elder Dante returned, he immediately went north to fight against the nether monk. According to the exact information obtained by the disciple, the Maitreya palace has controlled the netherworld entrance in Mabe, and the nether monk has been defeated. But there are 7 such netherworld entrances. Lin Zua knew that every word he said might affect the fate of the temple, so he said one thing and reported it truthfully. Hearing the speech, the great friar of Shortbeard Jade Pu territory began to meditate. But the changeable devil nearby suddenly said, "Temple Lord and Elder, in my opinion, the Dante's move is undoubtedly to involve the temple in the dispute between the human race and the underworld. In the square-inch spiritual domain, the temple faces only a few sects, and once he arrives at the Earth Star, he may face the whole underworld. Yi Tian is no matter how powerful he is, he invites our temple to enter the Earth Star, which just shows that he is alone and in urgent need of help. We God don't let others take advantage of the temple, and I opposed not to get too close to Yi Tian at the beginning. Now we are surrounded by several large gates. Isn't it because we support the Maitreya palace?" "Medicine King, Elder Shui, what do you mean?" Yen Yunyan looked at the old Shui monster and the old woman next to her. The old woman Medicine King immediately said, "I don't have any opinion, old woman. Only the Hall Lord will follow. The old woman will do what the Hall Lord decides." Yen Yunyan nodded with satisfaction, and her eyes fell on old Shui monster. Old monster Shui stroked his gray beard and said in a deep voice, "In order to save the temple crisis, the Medicine King and I used a secret method and spent more than half a life yuan to forcibly enter the realm of fake Jade Pu, which did great harm to ourselves, and our strength was not as good as that of the real Jade Pu. The eldest elder was seriously injured, and his cultivation ability was only 60% or 70%. The other major sects are busy protecting themselves for fear of Yi Tian. If Yi Tian leaves, I'm afraid their siege will be destroyed. Earth comes back again. No matter what the situation of Earth Star is, I think the worst result is the destruction of the temple. If you stay in the spirit area, the temple will be destroyed. It is estimated that only the Temple Lord and the changeable devil can escape. How is it possible?" The changeable demon king immediately said with a change in his face, "Yu Mao is the one who escaped alone. Even if the temple is facing the disaster of destruction, Yu Mao is bound to fight to the death. Little sister, you are the lord of the temple. Since you have entrusted all the important tasks of the temple to you for your brother, you can make your own decisions." At this time, Friar Shortbeard finally spoke again. "Well, since my brother said so, I decided that all the disciples would immediately enter the cave and rush to Earth Star. Even if all of us died in the war, as a man of Dandi, he would definitely be the disciples of the boxing temple. After all, it seems that the relationship between Ir and Yi Tian has reached a deep level. Here, the low-level disciples of the temple may be the first to die. Who are you? I have the heart to watch the temple burn with countless years of hard work. This time, I bet my decision is right." At this time, the temple master stood up and said decisively, "Now that the Hall Lord has decided, Yu Yen respects the order." Seeing that only himself is left with different opinions, the changeable devil stood up and said helplessly, "Act immediately." Yen Yunyan nodded slightly and said decisively. At the same time, a debate is also taking place in the Yuezong of Langya landscape, more than 60,000 miles away. In this elegantly decorated room, in addition to Morong Jun, the leader of Shueiyue sect, there is also a female monk, who is also a big monk in Yupu territory. "Elder Martial Brother, I have no objection to rush to help Zuxing. Moreover, if I can go through the space channel, I can go there in person. However, if Shueiyue sect goes to Earth Star, it means giving up the whole sect. The foundation of Shueiyue sect, which has been built by countless ancestors, has developed and expanded a little. Once it gives up, Shueiyue sect will continue. The most basic way out is gone. Everything she has done before has been made into wedding clothes for people." The female Xiuxing said with wide eyes and fierce voice and color. "That's all, younger martial sister Tan. It's the greatest wish of our ancestors to return to Zuxing and reopen Shueiyue sect at Zuxing. All the disciples of Shueiyue sect go to Earth Star. Except for the loss of resources, the disciples don't suffer any loss. Before you discuss, I have ordered all the disciples outside to return to the sect. They should all be on their way. As long as the disciples of Shueiyue sect are still there, water will come. Yuezong will certainly rise. But if the ancestor star is destroyed, the ancestor's wish can no longer be realized. Morong Jun said coldly. For this reason, Nun Tan glanced at Morong Jun and asked. Morong Jun immediately shook his head and said, of course not. There's another reason. As you know, when Emperor Dan killed Qing'anzi, all his enemies were terrified. Only because he was eager to return to the Earth Star to fight against Mingxiu, he didn't have time to fight against those sects, but it can be imagined that one day in the future, Fengsuan Spirit Realm will reshuffle, and the master of Fengsuan Spirit Realm is definitely Emperor Dan. Even Dan Emperor Yi Tian has no intention of operating in Fengsuan Spiritual Realm. The temple must be in charge of Fengsuan Spiritual Realm. They are the first sect to support Yi Tian. Yi Tian will definitely repay his kindness. Therefore, if Shueihua sect wants to be strong, it can't bypass the of Yi Tian. An Earth Star is our ancestor star. It's our only right choice to be in love and reason, now and in the future. However, the foundation of Shueihua sect, as well as those aura eyes, trial caves, and various fields, should be abandoned. It's really regrettable, said Nun Tan weakly. Younger martial sister Tan, why don't you understand? No matter who occupies these things, they can't be destroyed, but they are used by others for a period of time. In the future, Shueihua sect will return to the square-inch spirit domain. At that time, whoever occupies them will double let them spit out. Morong Jun said coaxing. Now that the leader elder martial brother has made a decision, it seems that I can't convince you. Do as you want. I hope you won't regret it one day, Nun Tan said, turning away without looking back. It has been reduced to a spiritual blessing land of ruins. Yi Tian, who returned from the valley where the space passage was located, collected more than 100 martial spirit puppets cleaning the battlefield into Zumaji and flew straight to a huge bare stone mountain. Standing at the foot of the mountain, his eyes shone from the sky and looked underground. He searched the soul of the disciple in the Holy Land of Yuanying, and knew that the treasure house of Holy Land resources was under the stone mountain. But that Yuanying just knows about it. Because this treasure house stores the accumulation of spiritual emptiness and blessings for countless years, it is impossible for easy disciples to enter it. Such as Su Mijie of Qing'anzi, the water stored in it is Qing'anzi's personal resources. It is impossible for him to put all the resources of the Holy Land into his Shumi precepts, because the cultivation of more than 10,000 disciples of the Blessed Land has been consumed and operated by the Blessed Land, and may need to be spent at any time, or all kinds of inputs may be put into the treasure house at any time. As the ancestor of the land of spiritual emptiness and blessing, he could not take care of these trivial affairs. Therefore, it is conceivable that the resources in this treasure house are the foundation of the land of spiritual emptiness and bliss, and are strictly managed and protected. Yi Tian naturally doesn't need to know how to get in and out of the treasure house, and he doesn't need other methods. Yuan Tian's eyes shine through the bottom. When he sees the huge treasure house below, the 5 elements beads with shimmering light have appeared in his hand. The next moment, he has disappeared from his place. Hundreds of feet away, that is, a flying escape. The treasure house located deep underground has been placed in front of Yi Tian. This underground treasure house has strong field protection, but for the 5-element pearl, any field is useless. Yi Tian walked through the field from the light and entered the treasure house. It has a radius of tens of thousands of feet. The walls and floors are all made of bluestone. Rows of shelves, rows of boxes and cabinets can't be seen at a glance. Massive resources can only be seen through the coverage of God. Yi Tian has entered the treasure house of the demon family in the Great Wilderness Spirit Domain and the treasure house of Wanyu Alliance. The resources inside are massive. The treasure house of this spiritual and blessed land, but in terms of area, it looks no worse than those 2 treasure houses. The treasure house of a sect can never be installed with Shumi ring, nor can it be carried by anyone. Basically, it is stored in the safest place considered by the sect and guarded by the people of the whole sect. In this way, even if someone is lucky enough to enter the treasure house, he must be found soon. Even if the intruder is strong, he will be able to catch it with the power of the clan. To take a step back, even if the intruder has the means to escape, it is impossible to take away more resources in a short time. If they are all installed in Zumaji, it's hard to say. It may sweep away all resources with a big hand. If any strong sect leader takes these resources with him, as long as this person has an accident, he will lose all the resources of the sect. No sect will do such a thing. But now it's different. Tian first destroyed the Holy Land, and then entered the treasure house. He has enough time to take away these resources. As soon as he glanced, he began to receive those resources from Zumaji. With his powerful mind and powerful mana, he collected the treasure house resources very quickly and unimaginably fast. Large tracts of fairy jade were sent to Zumaji by him. The number of fairy jade alone could not be counted at all. Even Tian could not accurately calculate how many were white and bright. And those boxes, cabinets, and jars. Tian didn't even take a close look at what was inside, so he waved his big sleeve and sent them all into Zumaji. In the past, in the treasure house of Wanyu Alliance in the Great Wilderness Spirit Domain, Tian chose one by one, looked at it one by one, and then decided which one to want or not. But now, he came to swallow all the things, no matter what they were, and put them in Zumaji first. When you get back to Earth Star and have enough time, you can sort out, screen, classify and count. Even some items are too fragmented, and Tian even sent the whole shelf into Zumaji. Time goes by bit. It took Tian more than half an hour to collect all the resources in New Auda's treasure house. The treasure house full of resources has become empty. The more than 200 originally empty Zumaji on his body had become full. Then he left the underground treasure house and returned to the ground. Then he drove the fierce flying sword and flew to a lush valley in the distance. There are lush vegetation and exotic fragrance, and the valleys within a radius of dozens of miles are full of all kinds of spiritual materials. It is the famous Lingshu Blessed Land Medicine Garden in Fengsu and Lingyu. Tian flew over the medicine garden and looked around. He moved and called out more than 100 martial spirit puppets. Drive them to all directions of the medicine garden and start harvesting leeks. Look at the small number of these puppets. Tian called some martial spirit puppets from nearby to join the team to collect spiritual materials. Naturally, these Wuhuan puppets do not know the types of spiritual materials, but under Tian's instructions, they have the palm like a magic weapon, inserted into the ground, connected with the earth, and dug out of the ground with the roots of spiritual materials. Every time they dig out, there are large pieces of soil, on which there are many spiritual materials and a complete medicine garden, which is divided by many martial soul puppets. Tian didn't do it himself. He was suspended over the medicine garden, his mind covered tens of thousands of miles, and observed the situation around him. Not even underground. A moment. His figure moved, the 5-element pearl appeared in his hand, and flew away in a flash. When flying to a certain place, the 5-element beads urge their body to fly underground, and finally appear in an underground secret room. Dozens of disciples of Lingshu Blessed Land who were hiding here suddenly saw Tian appear, and their faces immediately showed a look of fear. Just before they had time to make any response, the fierce soldiers' flying swords flashed out and drew terrible sword lights. In a scream, they cut the remaining disciples in the Holy Land into the air in an instant. Tian made continuous gestures and put away the Shumi precepts in the hands of these disciples. Although these ordinary disciples may not have many precious resources, the number of disciples in the Maitreya Palace is too large, and the resources needed are also massive. Although he has just collected the treasure house of Lingshu Blessed Land, he will not let go of these Shumi precepts. After all, a little makes a lot. What's more, who knows which monk's Sumi precepts will not surprise people? After all is collected. He moved again and flew back to the ground. In this way, Tian kept flying and stopping over the Holy Land, and went deep into the ground. After more than a dozen times, he finally stopped wandering, but returned to the medicine garden. Tian swept away the scriptures of the disciples in the blessed land of spiritual emptiness who hid in the chaos. The night sky temple covers the whole Holy Land. After careful exploration for several times, it has been determined that no one here has survived. Next, Tian started to move again and sent the underground medicine garden cut into pieces to Zumaji one by one. He also didn't have time to carefully check the types of these spiritual materials. Whenever he passed by, as soon as the mana urged him, God thought to lock these fine medicine garden fragments. They were included in Shumi precepts. After one Shumi ring is full, Tian takes out another Shumi ring. After it is full, replace it with an empty one to continue loading. Because some spiritual materials are fragile and require extremely high living conditions, Tian can only spread these fragments of the medicine garden in the huge space of Zumaji, and dare not squeeze them. All this was done very carefully, but even so, it took only half an hour to put all the spiritual materials into the precepts. At this time, within the coverage of Yi Tian's divine sword, several figures have been found moving towards this side, including Yen Yunyang Shui, the lord of the temple he knows, the old man surnamed Shui, who is favored by the great eagle spirit, and the old woman medicine king. These people came a little later than expected, but there must be a lot of preparatory work for the overall relocation of Nuwa University, which is not much late. Seeing these people flying, Yi Tian looked relaxed. He also collected all his martial spirit puppets into Zumaji. Then he stepped on the fierce soldier flying sword and flew away in the direction of the space channel. When Yi Tianfei arrived at the location of the space channel, 5 circles of aura ripples appeared in the sky, and then 5 strong Yupu people such as the temple appeared in the air. Yi Tian motioned, put away the fierce soldier's flying sword and looked up. Taoist friend of Dan Di, I've kept you waiting. Yen Ruyu, bring all the disciples of the temple to meet. In the air, the temple lord Yen Yunyang made a chief inspector to Yi Tian and said. With a smile, Yi Tian bowed slightly to the temple master Yen Ruyu and the other monks in Yupu territory and said, it's not too late. Yi has just finished his work. When the 5 people in the air fell, the gray-haired old monster Shui laughed at Yi Tian. Do you remember, Taoist friend of the Red Emperor, when we last met, you were still cultivating in Longmen, but you haven't seen it for a while, and you have become a monk of Yuanying. Shui really admires you. Besides, the flying speed of the Red Emperor just now is no worse than that of the great monk of Yupu. It makes Shui look ashamed. When Shui entered Yuanying, if he is compared with Taoist friend of the Red Emperor, it will certainly fall thousands of miles. Ha, Shui Daoyu praised me falsely, Yaowang Daoyu, you're alright? Yi Tian skipped the topic with a smile and looked directly at the old woman Yaowang. The old woman arched her hand at Yi Tian, smiled and said, don't meet Yi Daoyu. It's like a dream. I didn't expect that one day, the temple fought side by side with Qingming blessed land. Yi Tian smiled and said, this is the so-called like-minded, which shows that Qingming blessed land has a deep relationship with the temple machine. With that, he looked at Friar Shortbeard and the changeable devil. At this time, Yen Yunyang, the lord of the temple, smiled, pointed to the monk and said, this is my brother Yen Zhongkai. Yu Yan is also the temple elder. Disrespect, it was Yen Daoyu and Yu Daoyu. Disrespect. Yi Tian exchanged greetings with them. Finally, his eyes flashed and looked at Shui Leigui and Yao Wang again, with a look of surprise on his face. But he didn't say anything, but turned his eyes to Friar Shortbeard, Yen Zhongkai, Yen Ruyu's brother. Yen Yunyang sensitively felt the change in Yi Tian's eyes, and asked, what's wrong with you, Taoist friend of the Dan Emperor? Yi Tian smiled, nodded, and said, I know my family best. This Yen Daoyu was seriously injured and his injury is very strange. He can't give full play to his strength. If he doesn't repair it in time, I'm afraid there will be a risk of falling his accomplishments. I'm afraid that this Taoist friend and the Medicine King Taoist friend are trying to help improve the state by breaking through the Jade Poo state, which has caused great damage to the flesh. They not only lost a lot of longevity yuan, but also left a great hidden danger for future cultivation. Similarly, if they are not treated in time, the situation is worrying. Dante, do you have a way to treat it? Hearing Yi Tian's words, they were all right. Everyone looked bright, but among these people, only Yen Yunyang had the best friendship and the most contact with Yi Tian. She asked with an idea. Yi Tian said thoughtfully, Yen Daoyu, what did you call Yi just now? Yen Yunyang laughed at the speech and said, Yen Yunyang understands the meaning of the Dan Emperor. Since she is called the Dan Emperor, she is superb in the Dan Dao. She is not only in the spirit domain, but also in the world. I'm afraid that my sentence just now is a little superfluous. The Dan Emperor must have been in mind? Yi Tian nodded slightly and said, Yen Daoyu praised me. However, since he can see the situation of the 3 Taoists, he can solve it naturally, but it's not urgent for a while. After arriving at the Earth Star, you will naturally prepare spiritual materials to refine pills. Not only will he eliminate the hidden diseases of the 3 Taoists, but also try to make up for the lost longevity yuan of Shui Daoyu and Yaowang Daoyu. Dan Di Daoyu, can they get all their Shui yuan back? Yan Yunyang asked. Yi Tian thought for a moment and replied, it's not impossible for them to make up for all their lost longevity, but their practice of forcibly improving cultivation is against the sky, and pulling out seedlings to promote it is very harmful to their body. Generally speaking, it is irreversible. It takes a long time to diagnose and treat, even if it's a panacea. Moreover, the spiritual materials they need are rare things against the sky if it can be easily resolved. Can't all friars in the realm of God break through to the realm of Jade and Pu through this secret method? Then they can make up for Shui Yuan and heal the wounds, right? However, since they are two Taoist friends in the temple, Yi will do everything he can to remove their hidden diseases and make up for them. The Shui Yuan of the two Taoist friends will also raise spiritual materials to refine pills and kill the two Taoist friends. The fake Jade Pu realm is upgraded to the real Jade Pu realm. Listen to Yi Tian's words. Old Shui Monster and the old woman of the Medicine King suddenly showed a surprised look on their faces. They all bowed deeply to Yi Tian and said, Taoist friend of the Dante, our lives and possessions will be handed over to some of Yi Dan Tunnel. If there is any problem with spiritual materials or other resources, we will naturally do everything and will not let the Dante work in vain. Yi Tian laughed and said, the two Taoist friends are serious, and there is no need to hang up on their external things. Yi must do everything he can. But then again, there is absolutely no problem with the current physical condition of the two Taoist friends for another 100 years. When Shui Leagui heard the speech, he frowned and asked, Dan Di is telling the truth. Yi Tian nodded. Yi will never be wrong. He can support for 100 years. Shui Leagui and the Medicine King old woman looked at each other, and their eyes showed some luck. Originally, there was absolutely no problem to support them for 300 or 500 years based on their realm cultivation and physical condition. I just didn't expect that after forcibly improving their realm cultivation, the loss of longevity yuan was so great that there was only 100 years left. Cultivators. Pursuing a long life and eternal longevity is the motivation of cultivators. 100 years is definitely a long life for a secular person, but for cultivators, it's just a passing moment. It's passing in a flash. Both of them have some premonitions about their physical condition. They just didn't expect it to be so serious. If they hadn't met Yi Tian today, the two sides would have formed such a relationship. When Yi Fei soared to the sky, it would not be so easy for them to find Yi Tian for help. Thinking of this, one of the two looked at Yan Yunyang gratefully and bowed deeply to Yi Tian, so they didn't say more. Both sides are smart people. The reason why Yi Tian said these words may not have made them understand their own situation. With this bow, everything was silent at this time. Yan Yunyang opened her mouth at the right time. No matter how important it is, it's not as important as going to Earth Star. Dan Di Taoist friends, so let's get ready to set out. Yi Tian nodded slightly and said, the Earth Star was the ancestor of the friars of the Watermoon sect, and their roots are in the Earth Star. The disciples of the Watermoon sect want to go to the Earth Star with us. We should be able to arrive in some time. Let's make some preparations during this time. The 5 great friars of Yupu territory in the temple all know that the space channel of Lingshu blessed land is not stable. They are also very curious about what methods Yi Tian will adopt to enable them to pass through the space channel safely. Therefore, they all nodded and didn't say anything, just waiting for Yi Tian's following. Yi Tian said no more. He moved his hand and took out several Shumi rings. Yan Yunyang said, there is a black stone in Shumi world, which looks like sand and is called Huafan stone. This stone has the effect of suppressing the monk's mana and can make the monk become immortal without mana temporarily. In this way, when passing through the space channel, it will not cause the shock of the space force. As for the 5 Taoists in Yupu territory, they can enter the magic weapon cave and use this stone to suppress their magic power. Yan Daoyu can choose a trusted Yuanying territory Shoshui in the temple and carry the magic weapon cave with him. Hearing Yi Tian finish, the 5 great friars of Yupu territory in the temple looked at each other. After Yan Zhongkai nodded slightly, Yan Ruyu smiled at Yi Tian and said, Yi Daoyu, if you can go to the Earth Star together, where can there be untrustworthy people? We will enter the magic weapon cave and carry it with you. Yi Tian also nodded, it's good, you'll be ready. Then he sent the Zumaji in his hand. Is there such a magical treasure? The people in the temple took out the magic weapon they carried with them in the valley. Yan Zhongkai took the lead in picking up a Shumi ring. When his mind moved, the Huathan stone in the Shumi ring kept falling on the ground. However, when Huathan stone reached a certain number, Yan Zhongkai felt that his mana was getting weaker and weaker. Indeed, under the influence of Huathan stone, he could not give full play to his mana. The other low-level disciples came and wanted to collect piles of Huathan stones into the cave. Under the suppression of the power of Huathan stones, they were far more unbearable than Yan Zhongkai, and their magic power was even less. Even some disciples below the Dragon's Gate are really like ordinary people, and they can't mobilize any mana. Yan Zhongkai exclaimed, leaving Huathan stone pile for a distance, and miraculously found that his mana had returned to its original state again. Dante Taoist friend, although this thing has a powerful function of suppressing mana, how can the mana be manipulated and used since it has been suppressed? Yan Zhongkai asked in some confusion. Yi Tian smiled and said, there is a way to solve this matter. Yi has a special treasure coat here. After wearing the treasure coat, he will not be affected by Huathan stone. As he spoke, Yi Tian motioned and took out 5 Xianin stone clothes. As soon as his magic power urged him, he flew to Yan Zhongkai and Yan Yunyang respectively. The 5 great friars in Yupu territory were well informed. They didn't need Yi Tian to explain too much, so they put the brand of divine thought on themselves and put their precious clothes on their bodies. After the treasure clothes were hidden into the body, 5 great friars from Yupu came to the Huathan stone pile and tried it again and again. Sure enough, they had no impact on the mana. So, Yan Zhongkai didn't stop. He tried to take off his treasure clothes again and tried it again. Only then did he put the treasure clothes on his body again. This treasure dress is too magical. He sighed excitedly, and suddenly his eyes brightened and said, Dan D Taoist friends, the treasure clothes can dispel the influence of every stone. If you use the treasure clothes to defeat your opponent, and then wear the treasure clothes to fight, wouldn't you win? Yi Tian said with a smile, Yan Daoyu was really sensitive. He used this method to deal with Mingxiu on the Earth Star. Although he killed millions of Mingxiu, there were no casualties among the disciples of the Maitreya Palace. Therefore, Yi is still very sure about fighting Mingxiu. The difficulty is how to protect ordinary people from harm. I see, Yan Mao understands. When Yi Tianyi said, Yan Zhongkai looked relaxed and suddenly had a bottom in his heart. It turned out that Yi Tianyi needed manpower. It was not that he couldn't beat Mingxiu, but that he had too many people to protect, and there were too many Mingxiu. Once dispersed, I'm afraid he couldn't kill them in a short time. Immediately, he said with a positive look, Dante Taoist friend, Yan has always had a doubt in his heart. Yi also knows that this matter involves the privacy of Dante Taoist friend, but it is inconvenient to ask. Does Yan Daoyu want to ask why Yi used this kind of Huathan stone to kill Qingyanzi with his cultivation in Yuanying territory? Yi Tian asked with a smile. Sure enough, I can't hide anything from Yi Daoyu. I don't know if Dan D Daoyu can solve Yan's doubts? Yan Zhongkai nodded. Yi Tian said mysteriously with a smile, the Qingyan sun has entered the Heaven Palace. He has a quick reaction, powerful magic and fast speed. It is absolutely unimaginable that Yi used Huathan stone, but he was always avoided by the other party and was unable to play. Finally, he forced Yi to kill the thief without using the unique killing method given to me by his master. You mean the Flint Emperor? Yan Zhongkai asked immediately. Yi Tian once talked to Yan Yunyang, the lord of the temple, about Master Sui Huang. Since Yan Yunyang knew it, wouldn't it be a joke if her brother Yan Zhongkai didn't know it? Exactly. Yi Tian replied casually and then pointed to the distance. The speed of Shueiyue sect is also very fast. Morong Taoist friends unexpectedly came later. They looked along Yi Tian's direction, but they saw that there was no one in the sky. Where could they see a shadow? The 5 people immediately let go of their mind. Among them, Shui Leagui and the old woman Medicine King still didn't see Morong Jun's shadow, while Yu Yan suddenly turned his head and looked at Yi Tian, Taoist friend of the Dan Emperor, is your mind so strong? After Yi Tian pointed out Morong Jun's whereabouts, he reluctantly felt that Morong Jun had entered the scope of his mind. Naturally, the time was a little later than Yi Tian. This situation can only show Yi Tian's mind is stronger than him. Yi Mao's mind is a little stronger than his own realm. Yi Tian replied with a slight smile. When Yu Yen heard what he said, he immediately shut up. Dante's modest method is really impossible to interface. Even Yen Yunyang and Yen Zhongkai looked at Yi Tian, and their eyes flashed away. Dante, several Taoist friends of the temple have kept you waiting. With Situ Jun, there was also the female Xiao surnamed Tan Yupu. As soon as they appeared in the sky, they saw Yi Tian and Yen Yunyang below. He looked at the female Xiao surnamed Tan around him and began to greet each other. The meaning of that look in her eyes, female monk Tan naturally knows it. Morong Jun's meaning is nothing more than that. You see, there are 5 great friars in Yupu territory in the temple who go to Earthstar with Yi Tian. Can they make a wrong choice? The 5 great friars of Yupu territory in the temple just arched their hands at Morong Jun. This is Yi Tian's home. Yi Tian presided over the return to Earthstar. Naturally, they can't dominate. Taoist Morong came just in time. We are preparing to pass through the space channel, Yi Tian said at this time. While talking, he looked at the female monk surnamed Tan. Who is this Taoist friend? This is a proper process. For the great friar of Yupu territory who came with Mu Rongjuan, Yi Tian certainly could not regard it as heir, so he arched his hands and asked. This is Tan Suching, the great elder of our sect. Morong Jun timely introduced. Nice to meet you, Taoist Yi. Tan Suching hugged his fist and said, when Dante became famous, I was just a trivial monk in the realm of transforming gods. I had been concentrating on cultivation and had little contact with the outside world. Although Dante was famous, I met him for the first time. I didn't expect to be so young. Yi Tian said with a smile, Yi is a man for 2 generations. If his age is added together, he is also an old man over 200 years old. It's really a shame. It took Yi Daoyu only 200 years to cultivate in Yupu, which has been beyond the reach of people. Then he reincarnated and was surprisingly faster than before. Alas! Tan Suching shook his head when he said this. Yi Tian still said with a smile, since the Taoist friends of the temple and Shueihua sect have arrived, let's get ready to start now. Then, Yi Tian took out several Huafan stones of Zumaji, explained their usage one by one, and then called his martial spirit puppet to help send piles of Huafan stones to each magic weapon cave. Tan Suching saw such a human puppet for the first time and couldn't help looking more. Since the woman didn't ask more, Yi Tian didn't explain anything. In terms of Shueihua sect, Yi Tian sent out a magic weapon cave with twice the time field. The disciples of the temple and Shueihua sect were accepted into the magic weapon cave by the big friar of Yupu territory of our sect. Finally, like the temple, Morong Jun of Shueihua sect also chose the magic weapon cave where Yi Tian took them to live. Although the number of the 2 sects was large, in the end, they only merged into 2 magic weapons cave. In this way, the process of Yi Tian's mind branding became much simpler. After quickly recognizing the 2 magic weapons as the lord of the cave, Yi Tian put away many martial spirit puppets, looked around, and then a magic force hit somewhere in the valley with a buzzing sound to open the field of protecting the space channel. Yi Tian knew that the strong man who fled from the Holy Land must know the way to open the field. He didn't think that this field could protect the space channel for a long time. What he needed was that during the transmission period, it would not be damaged and lead to the collapse of the space channel. Look at the normal operation of the field shield. Yi Tian nodded to the carving girl, urged by the 5 elements of beads in his hand, and then the 2 passed through the field shield and directly entered the vortex of the space channel. On the vast sea, the choppy sea water washes an isolated island in the sea one after another. Such a scene may not have changed for thousands of years. The waves are lonely, and so are the islands. However, at the moment, on the ground of the island, a faint light suddenly flew out, and then 2 figures flew out of the ground and rushed straight to the low altitude. These 2 figures, a man and a woman. The man is Yi Tian, who has just returned from the square-inch spirit domain. The woman is naturally the carved woman transformed by the golden eye god carving. Yi Tianchen was in the air. He quickly let go of his mind and observed the situation around him. He couldn't help frowning slightly. What to do?
Master, Mingxiu really launched a general attack. The carving girl also released her mind and said with a change of look. It's not a general attack, it's just a tentative attack, or Mingxiu only sent out a small part of his strength.
You haven't seen what the general attack of the Ming clan is like, but I've seen it.
Tian said with a gesture and released the 2 magic treasures of Shuiwei sect and the temple. Now that he has come to Earthstar, Tian will release them at the first time as long as the situation is absolutely not allowed.
In order to avoid unnecessary misunderstandings caused by being in the cave for too long, in essence, the cooperation between Tian and Shuiwei sect or with the temple has just begun. A good start is very important. With the enlargement of the magic weapon cave, the 5 great friars of Yupu territory and the 2 of Shuiwei sect floated out of the cave.
This is the Earth Star? Feeling the strange scenery in front of them, they began to look at the surrounding environment.
Yes, you have just passed through the space channel. You Taoist friends think it may take a long time because you are in the magic weapon cave in the field of twice the time. In fact, it takes only half the time you feel. This time, we should come back at the right time. Mingxiu has launched a large-scale attack in the direction of China.
Tian looked at the east, said slowly. It's amazing that the spirit is so thin that the Dante can cultivate so fast.
Since Mingxiu launched an attack, it's just to destroy them. When Tian spoke, the people also opened their minds.
Naturally, they saw that Shirgu Mingxiu was flying towards the east 20 or 30,000 miles away. The 10 routes of meditation are about thousands of miles away from each other, and the number of people on each route is no less than hundreds of thousands.
It seems that they are equally powerful.
Because of the different cultivation levels of those netherworld practitioners, each group of netherworld practitioners pulled out a long distance and looked vast and endless. Moreover, the most advanced troops have made contact with people, and the war is in full swing. Seeing such a situation, Yan Yunyang, the lord of the temple, said indifferently. At this time, Murong Jun said, since you are the landlord, please tell me how to fight this battle.
Tian looked at the east and said, there is a dark abyss in the square-inch spiritual realm. The nether cultivation there is roughly similar to the nether cultivation of the Earth Star. The attachment bones used by the nether cultivation are divided into 2 types, one is the flesh attachment bones, and the other is the skeleton attachment bones. The flesh attachment bones are more suitable for the environment outside the nether fog, and the skeleton attachment nether cultivation is relatively weaker. In this way, there are 6 skeleton attachment armies in the 10-route nether army and 4 flesh attachment nether armies. Yen Dao's side is responsible for the 4-way skeleton attached bone ghost repair, Morong Dao's Shuiwei sect is responsible for the 2-way skeleton attached bone ghost repair, and the other 4-way flesh attached bone ghost repair will be handed over to Yi. Tian immediately gave the rescue plan.
No, we know that the Taoist friends of the Dan Emperor have great powers, but there are 5 great friars in Yupu territory here in the temple, so each of them is responsible for the whole journey.
It's already a heavy task for Yi Daoyu to block 3 routes alone. Time doesn't wait, so it's settled. Let's go to the rescue separately. When we beat back Mingxiu, we will go to support the Taoist friends of the Dan Emperor immediately. Yan Yunyang shook her head and said, well, you Taoist friends, it doesn't matter how many nether practices are killed. The important thing is to protect the people and not be broken by nether practices. At this time, Tian agreed that it's inconvenient to waste time on disputes. Understand, instead of attacking from both sides, go straight to the border. Everybody do it.
Yan Yunyang said, and her body had disappeared from where it was.
The same is true for the other monks.
As for which border defense each person supports and which army they resist, they have already had a division of labor from their respective positions. At this time, the carving girl has also flashed into a body.
Tian leaped up step by step.
As soon as the divine carving flapped its wings, it has disappeared from its original place and went straight to the northeast. The Fugu Mingxiu army mentioned by Yi Tianko is the 4-way army located in the northernmost part, and the number of people on each road is no less than that on any road. There are so many flesh-attached bones, and each flesh-attached bone was once a fresh monk's life. Although these flesh-attached bones could not have been obtained recently, it can be imagined that in a distant past, in the last world of cultivation, the human friars suffered what kind of poison from the underworld, no matter which spiritual domain they came from, whether it was Earth Star or not. All the monks in the world made Yi Tianqin's anger rise to an unprecedented level. The golden eye divine carving under the seat gives full play to the speed, constantly flapping its wings, and moving in the sky like a big move, flickering and flickering. It has moved forward for a long distance. At this time, the disciples of the Maitreya Palace defending the western defense line had launched a fierce resistance against the leader who was the first to arrive by the Ming army. According to the instructions before leaving, Xianrun arranged heavy troops in the western defense line, sent 18 heavy troops, and sent the Beast Division here.
Each Washinjing disciple is a war zone, and behind each of the 18 Washinjing disciples is a large city.
Xianrun himself also sent scouts to stay away from the east and squat near various fog strongholds in the west, so as to obtain the trend of Mingxiu at the first time. When the 6 overseas strongholds of the underworld suddenly changed and gathered together, and obviously gathered in the stronghold closest to the east, showing signs of attacking to the east, Yi Tian sent 2 armies to support again. While Xianrun himself is also monitoring the movement of the fog sea, he is ready to rush to the west at any time.
Behind it is the Chinese city. Naturally, all the armies of the Maitreya Palace will not take it as a battlefield.
After some discussion, all the armies pushed thousands of miles to the west and put the blocking battlefield close to the border, so as to leave a long-distance buffer zone and set up 2 lines of defense. One of them blocked in the first line, and the second line of defense was mostly lower-level disciples. They arranged a large number of Huafan stones outside the protected city, so as not to break through the first line of defense and directly impact the urban area. In such a short time, a large number of people and property in the city had no time to transfer. Under the discussion of the emergency meeting of the Supreme Sergeant Command, a plan was made to stick to the city and transfer the people from nearby villages to the city. All this happened too suddenly and left too little time for people to transfer.
So far, large-scale rural people transfer is still ongoing. People from all parts of the West are gathering in nearby cities.
It seems that the scene is extremely chaotic. Some people who are unwilling to leave their homes and want to protect their property have exhausted the words of the people responsible for the transfer, but the effect is still very limited.
This leads to the current situation. Most of the people are moving. There are people in cities and in villages.
There are still a large number of transferred people on the way, and the front that needs the protection of the Maitreya Palace has not been reduced. When it was discovered that the great army of Netherworld cultivation was divided into 10 routes, Xianrun decisively ordered the 20 monks in the realm of God to unite with each other to fight against the great army of Netherworld cultivation. Since each army is centered on a monk in the realm of God, the transmission and implementation of orders in the Maitreya Palace is very fast, and the defense strategies and plans can be implemented at the first time.
Xianrun doesn't have to make another large-scale mobilization because he is worried about the uneven power of passers-by.
As the highest controller of the Xuanjia family in Luo Tianling domain, although he has now become Yi Tian's servant, Xianrun has exquisite mind, strong control ability and strategic vision. At this time, he really understood Yi Tian's good intentions. If Yi Tian hadn't arranged the troops so that he could flexibly mobilize all kinds of people, I'm afraid the mobilization of the Maitreya Palace would be chaotic when the army of the underworld comes. The quick mobilization gave the Maitreya Palace enough preparation time, so when the Ming army appeared, a fierce resistance began.
As soon as the battle started, it entered a white-hot stage.
In each war zone extending to the west, the first one to rush up is the martial spirit puppet, followed by a large number of monsters. As the disciples of the Royal Beast Division allocate monster resources to each disciple, they are no longer a few disciples of the Royal Beast Division who control a large number of monsters, which also makes the mobilization more flexible. Therefore, the disciples of U-Beast sector divided into 4 routes to assist in the defense of each theater in the middle. This position can facilitate the rescue of each theater on the left and right at any time.
There are 2 kinds of martial soul puppets.
One is a martial soul puppet equipped with treasure clothes, and the other is a martial soul puppet not equipped with treasure clothes. Although the number of treasure clothes refined by Tiangong branch seems not to be large, it is dwarfed by the distribution to every friar in the realm of God. These treasures will not only equip the martial soul puppets. While maximizing the attack power, the disciples of all gods should also give full consideration to maximizing the protection of the disciples of the Maitreya Palace. Therefore, some disciples of the High Realm Maitreya Palace who participated in the war were also allocated a corresponding number of treasure clothes.
Having treasure clothes is equivalent to an additional layer of defense.
According to Tian's method, Xianin stone treasure clothes and Huafan stone treasure clothes are equipped at the same time.
Huafan stone treasure clothes are outside and Xianin stone treasure clothes are inside.
In this way, Huafan stone can not only affect the friars themselves, but also hinder the magic power of Huafan stone treasure clothes to suppress the enemy. It is this kind of equipment matching that makes the martial soul puppets in the divine realm rush to the front, and what these martial soul puppets hold in their hands is a terrible magic weapon of half-immortal soldiers.
Each Huaxinjing disciple is equipped with about 300 Wuhuan puppets.
The Wuhuan puppets of the two armies are 600, followed by more than 4,000 fifth-order monsters and a few sixth-order monsters. Such a degree of defense forces that when the Ming Xiu army collided violently, it was like destroying the dead and tearing down the decay, which seriously damaged the leading force of the Ming family.
And these vanguard troops of netherworld cultivation are undoubtedly the most powerful step in netherworld cultivation. The two armies intersected and roared loudly. Mingxiu's mana was strongly suppressed by Huafan clothes, and the subsequent Wuhuan puppets effectively used this suppression and frantically killed Mingxiu. The strength of each nether cultivation army is also very strong. There are 3 golden bone nether cultivation commanders sitting in the command of the army. Seeing that they were strongly blocked by the Miro Palace from the front attack, they immediately changed the attack formation, changed from vertical advance to horizontal attack, and lengthened the horizontal display as much as possible. As a result, the defense of the Maitreya Palace had to be changed from intensive blocking to all-round defense. Those martial spirit puppets and monsters were gradually dispersed and blocked Mingxiu at different positions to prevent Mingxiu from breaking through the defense line and approaching the defensive cities behind him. This strategy is completely correct, and the combat effectiveness of all blocking armies is also very strong, but each army has the same problem, that is, the number is too small. There are more than 100,000 disciples in the Maitreya Palace, and most of them are low-level disciples. They sit more than 30 times. Now, the Ming Xiu, who is divided into 10 attacks, has a number of 5 or 6 million each way, and some even more. It takes a lot of time for such a number of netherworld practitioners to kill one by one. What's more, they spread out and launch a comprehensive attack on each theater, opening up the front hundreds of miles from the horizontal distance, and the limited troops of the Maitreya Palace also need to open up hundreds of miles. Otherwise, netherworld practitioners will inevitably break through the vacuum area without defense.
The 4 war zones in the middle are supported by the Royal Beast Division. Hundreds of thousands of monster beasts are distributed on the 4 battlefields, which can alleviate the pressure of these war zones and prevent Mingxiu from breaking in for the time being. However, the situation in the remaining 6 war zones in the north and south is not so optimistic. In this case, Xianran and his more than a dozen sixth-order spiritual pets immediately flew to the 3 war zones in the south for support, while in the 3 war zones in the north, he mobilized 3 Huaxinjing friars from the direction of the Fog Sea for assistance. But at this time, the reinforcements from the north have not yet arrived.
Patriarch, there are too many Mingxiu. I'm not afraid of death. I'm afraid I can't support it.
In the northernmost war zone, Morong Qianqian was the commander-in-chief, and the old woman of Huaxinjing of Shueiyue sect, who fought with her system, was the original elder.
The two are strong together.
At that time, this way of meditation was not a skeleton army, but a large army of flesh and bones. The front also opened 100 miles, which also forced this side to open the front defense. At this time, the old woman shouted to Morong Qianqian from a distance. Within the coverage of the divine mind, some physical and bone-attached Mingxiu have broken through the obstruction of the army and quickly fled east from no man's land, but the goal is to take the big city of the Terran. In particular, the defense force here is even weaker. There is neither the assistance of many monsters of the Royal Beast Division nor the reinforcement of Xianran. The reinforcements sent to reinforce are temporarily cancelled by Xianran because Mingxiu and the Fog Sea also launched an attack at the same time. Arrange to stay in the Fog Sea to fight the meditation there. It's my command that all puppets, monsters and disciples of our palace should try their best to stop at any cost, take the lead in killing the high-level Mingxiu and reduce the pressure on the second line of defense.
Morong made a quick decision and gave a loud order.
Before the war, Xian Run had predicted the emergence of this situation. At that time, it seemed that this situation must occur under the condition of this balance of power. At that time, Xian Run reminded all theaters that if this happens, don't worry. All theaters should continue to defend, so as not to make more Mingxiu break through the defense line. In addition to the second echelon arranged, Xian Run will deal with those Mingxiu who break through the defense line. However, there is always some gap between the fact and the prediction. With the breakthrough of the first nether cultivation, the latter nether cultivation keeps pushing eastward from the vacancy. Lord, the front is too long, and we are obviously short of manpower. The old woman's half-immortal soldier's flying sword spread out, and shouted to Morong as she frantically killed Mingxiu.
Hold on!
Morong Chuchu immediately shouted, and a sword light sprang up. More than a dozen flesh and bone-attached Mingxiu nearby were cut into flesh and blood.
Then she moved and flew to the defense vacuum. Palace Master. Look, there's reinforcements. Ah! It's the Palace Master, it's the Palace Master back.
Just then, the old woman suddenly shouted, her voice full of excitement. Morong Qianqian, who was in the air, couldn't help looking into the distance, but saw a figure suddenly emerge in the sky. It was the golden eye divine carving taken away by Yi Tian. Behind the divine carving, the young man standing in the wind was not the Palace Master Yi Tian, or who? It's good for the Palace Master to come back. Morong was determined. Although Yi Tianxiu was lower than her, I don't know when, Yi Tian has become the backbone of the whole Maitreya Palace. As long as he is there, there seems to be no problem that can't be solved. Lord, there are reinforcements in other war zones. Ah, like the first law enforcement envoy, they can perform large-scale movement, and there are still many. At this time, the old woman shouted again. Morong Qianqian took back his eyes from Yi Tian and released his mind to look at other war zones. Sure enough, as the old woman said, 7 or 8 big friars in Yupu territory have arrived in other war zones, and released a lot of magic weapons. A large number of friars poured out of the cave. It's the reinforcements brought by the Palace Master from the square-inch spirit domain. The Palace Master is really great. Morong Qianqian said, but his body kept flying south to fill the blank area there and stop Mingxiu. Yi Tian didn't shoot directly along the way, but when he was about to go to the battlefield, he immediately released more than 2,000 martial spirit puppets to support the 2 war zones in the south. He flew straight to the northernmost theater, where a large number of bony Mingxiu were moving north in an attempt to break through the unmanned area on the north. When he was about to go to the battlefield, Yi Tian thought and called out the fierce soldier flying sword. He pointed forward, sword spirit, kill. The cold light of the fierce soldier's flying sword flashed, and it was far away. Everywhere he passed, there were broken limbs flying all over the sky. Those bone-attached Mingxiu were slaughtered. At this time, Yi Tian also made a gesture and took out the ghost face mask. The 3 opportunities of the ghost face mask have been exhausted now. There are many cracks on it. You can't improve your cultivation level temporarily. However, Yi Tian found through observation that the effect of this ghost face mask to detonate the purple gold rune pattern in Mingxiu's body was not affected by the last chance. In other words, he is still a physical nightmare. Moreover, on the way here, he grabbed a body with bones and tried it, and the ghost mask didn't change at all after detonating the ghost repair. This just shows that the magic power of the ghost mask is not limited by the crack on the ghost mask, unless the ghost mask completely collapses and no longer exists. Boom! 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 Bursts of deafening explosions were heard. As Yi Tian's body fell, he approached the body with bones and nether cultivation with surging heads, and a large-scale explosion occurred within a radius of 4 or 5 feet. Those explosions were very dense. One explosion occurred almost at the same time. When they gathered together, the vibration produced was particularly noticeable. Morong, who had reached the predetermined position and began to block Mingxiu, heard the sound and saw Yi Tian's body flying away in the low air. Everywhere he passed, those bodies exploded, and the bodies turned into countless debris and scattered everywhere. No matter how powerful the meditations are, no matter how intensive those meditations are, no matter what kind of attack they launch on Yi Tian, they can't change their outcome. In front of Yi Tian, there is no enemy of unity.
The vast expanse of Ming-Xiu Yi Tian was destroyed by incredible means.
There was a vacuum in the vast area he passed.
What kind of magic power is this? What a powerful magic power!
Morong Chuchu, who had never seen Yi Tian fighting with the bone-attached Ming-Xiu of the flesh, was shocked in his heart and looked very excited. He moved his mind and asked the martial spirit puppets and monsters in the north to send reinforcements to the south. He has seen that as long as Yi Tian is alone in that war zone, he can hold it steadily. Naturally, there is no need to waste her other troops. However, some of the fleshly possessed bone Ming-Xiu who took the opportunity to escape to the east did not escape the interception of the fierce sword as fast as lightning.
All the fleshly possessed bone Ming-Xiu who luckily broke through died on the road. The palace master is back. The palace leader brought back reinforcements.
On the battlefield, all kinds of shouts began to appear. When the disciples of the Maitreya palace heard those shouts, they couldn't help looking at the martial spirit puppets that were already visible to the naked eye and began to carry out tougher resistance in killing.
Yi Tian's strength came to help.
In a moment, the flesh and bone-attached Ming-Xiu who joined the scuffle in the northernmost theater had been killed by him. After seeing Yi Tian so brave, the Ming-Xiu behind the Ming army had no courage to continue the forced attack. They turned around one after another and began to retreat backward. Yi Tian ignored those Ming-Xiu, but his figure flashed. He continued to go south in the chaotic battlefield and killed them all the way.
You can see Ming-Xiu in his sight.
In the nether cultivation team, the higher the nether cultivation is, the earlier the nether cultivation is to join the offensive and defensive war. The stronger the cultivation strength is, and these nether cultivation are Yi Tian's main killing targets. As for those retreating netherworld practices, their accomplishments are naturally weaker than these netherworld practices, and their threat to the Terran is also much smaller.
Yi Tian's body is like electricity, just like a horse racing enclosure.
No matter how fast it is, there are always explosions everywhere, continuous, forming a large chain reaction. With the increasing number of Yi Tian killing Ming-Xiu, Morong Chanshan has excitedly removed all the martial spirit puppets and monsters, and went south with the old woman to support the nearby war zone. The whole theater was swept by Yi Tian, and no Ming-Xiu dared to stay in this area. However, what Morong Chuchu and the elder and the old woman did not expect was that just when they arrived in the nearby war zone, Yi Tian followed them and launched a large-scale massacre again. It is also a piece of flesh and blood, roaring constantly. His virtual shadow flashed, and it was a flight of flesh and blood.
Go to the next theater.
Before Morong Chuchu and the old woman had time to show their skills, the war zone had almost been disintegrated by Yi Tian alone. Together with the two elders of Shui Yuzong who were responsible for the defense of the theater, they were also extremely shocked and reinforced southward with their strength. From north to south, the third theater. Yi Tian killed the enemy so fast that after Ming-Xiu heard the wind and retreated, he unexpectedly arrived in the third theater before Morong.
With his arrival, another shocking massacre began again.
The tragedy of Ming-Xiu and the other two war zones can't hide from the Ming-Xiu here. When Yi Tian's figure just appeared here, the flesh and bone attached Ming-Xiu here gave up the attack and didn't want to fight. They were all eager to get out and turned around and retreated to the rear.
Boom! Boom! Yi Tian can't let go of these nether practices. Besides, you don't have to kill, just fly.
Wherever he went, there were still terrible explosions, one by one. The troops of the previous war zones had gathered together, and then buried them under the command of Morong Chanshan and others. They no longer want to go to the war zone in the south to support them, because their speed is no faster than Yi Tian. They haven't arrived yet, but the palace master Yi Tian always goes one step ahead of them. In order not to waste time on the road, under Morong's clear proposal, these armies have changed their defense to attack and started the crazy pursuit of Ming-Xiu. When Morong Chuchu and others made a full-scale counterattack, Yi Tian directly gave up the crazy killing in the third theater and rushed directly to the fourth theater.
The remaining 7 war zones should also show a lack of support when there is strong assistance from the Maitreya palace.
However, the nether practitioners there are still launching crazy attacks, trying to break through the blockade of Terran monks and rush to the big city with dense Terran population.
Once there, it will be a great victory for Ming-Xiu.
Because at that time, the nether friars will be mixed with the Terran people, and the Terran friars will throw rats and fear weapons. It is impossible to attack the Nether Friars as if they were afraid. At that time, by controlling the Terran people, Mingxiu can blackmail the Terran Friars. Otherwise, they won't mind killing. The Terran Friars are not obedient unless they ignore the life and death of the people. This idea is not only very insidious, but also very effective. If you really get to this point, even Yi Tian will feel extremely difficult to deal with. However, this idea didn't last long. When Yi Tian arrived in the fourth theater, he swept countless flesh bodies and bones again with the power of thunder. The Mingxiu in the other war zones finally completely collapsed. Yi Tian is as brave as a god, and some people in the northern theater have rushed to the south for support, especially those in the nearest theater have felt the fifth theater. In this case, it is impossible to break through the Terran city again. Finally, at this moment, Mingxiu completely collapsed. Mingxiu, who had no fighting spirit, began to retreat like a tide under the command of those golden bone puppets.
Send me the order and chase him all over.
Yi Tian suddenly soared to the sky, reaching high above the sky. He was like a thunderbolt and spread it in all directions. Yu Yan was the great friar of Yupu territory who came to this theater to support. When he came, this theater, like the theater where Murong Chuchu was located, had been broken through by some Ming practitioners. In a hurry, Yu Yan released some of the monks of Xinjing and Yuanying in the magic weapon cave. After that, he only had time to stop the fierce attack of Mingxiu. His formation was just stable, and there was no time to launch a counterattack.
The Mingxiu here retreated like a tide. Chase and kill.
Yu Yan's strong body gave a loud cry in the air and looked at Yi Tian, who was running rampant all the way in the Ming cultivation team. There were surging waves in his heart.
He was shocked by the means of exploding countless meditation in the places he passed. Even if he is a great monk in Yupu territory, he can move mountains and fill the sea with all his skills. Even if he can sweep one area with one move and kill many nether practitioners, he can never do this like Yi Tian. He doesn't need to kill countless nether practitioners as long as his body passes by. Is this the killing method handed down by the Flint Emperor? Yu Yan murmured. The only doubt in his heart about Yi Tian in Yuanying territory disappeared, and he was completely convinced. At the command, Yu Yan began to command the disciples of the temple and merged with the disciples of the Maitreya palace to cover up Mingxiu madly. This downwind battle is like breaking bamboo. Although there were still a large number of netherworld practitioners who did not arrive at the battlefield on the way to the west, under the impact of the defeat of their own race, they directly turned their direction and retreated to overseas strongholds. All the way, Mingxiu was killed and injured. This is generally the case in the remaining war zones in the south. Influenced by the defeat of the 4-route Ming army in the north, the 6-route Ming army also collapsed uncontrollably. Younger martial sister Tian, you see, this is the means of the former Dan Emperor, and this is the strength of the Qingming blessed land Maitreya Palace. Even if the last life falls, even if it is rebuilt in reincarnation, it is also amazing. Is the elder martial brother's decision right this time? In the queue chasing Mingxiu, Morong Jun meets Tan Suqing, and Morong Jun looks at Yi Tian in the distance, said with emotion. The two are supporting two adjacent war zones, and the distance of thousands of miles is only a flash away. Especially in this downwind battle, there is no risk. Therefore, under this situation, the two still have time to exchange a few words. Elder martial brother, my younger martial sister is short-sighted. Dante really subverts my understanding of the friar of Yuanying territory, but I always have a doubt. How did he do it? In such a short time, he is cultivated to this extent, and even if he is cultivated to Yuanying territory, he can use Yuanying territory as a great power to destroy and kill Tiangong territory. I'm afraid he will kill tens of thousands of people in time no one in the field can be its enemy, Tan Suqing said with a long breath after glancing at the long hair floating on her forehead. Yes, it would have developed in this direction. Younger martial sister, let's go after Mingxiu together. The aura of Earthstar is sweet, and we must not let Mingxiu go. Morong Jun nodded and smiled. Then they separated and commanded their disciples to hide and kill. This is true of Yen Yunyang, Yen Zhongkai, Shui Leigui and the old woman of the Medicine King in several war zones. All received the influence of the northern theater and changed from strategic defense to strategic attack.
Millions of meditation practitioners are retreating and rapidly reducing their staff. Under the crazy pursuit of these allied forces, ghost puppets, monsters and human friars can be seen everywhere in the sky.
Monks can be seen everywhere. The big picture is settled.
In the east of the battlefield, after taking more than a dozen 6-rank demons and killing Mingxiu who broke through the defense line on the way, Xian Run released his mind and covered the battlefield in the west, with an extremely excited look on his face. In his mind, he saw that 7 People's Friars were able to perform great movement and invincible against the enemy.
Undoubtedly, these are the great friars of Yupu territory.
However, in the sense of God, Yi Tian is more like killing God. His body turns into a virtual shadow, once again showing a scene when he doesn't return to the sea in Luo Tian's spiritual domain.
Mingxiu explodes.
With the master's personality charm, terrible strength, and unparalleled cultivation speed, there are a large number of high-level friars attached everywhere.
I don't know where the master will go in the future.
Shenrun murmured a sentence, waved his hand and flew west with more than a dozen 6-level demons, ready to join the team of chasing and killing Mingxiu. In the practice of the netherworld, those who escape quickly are those with strong realm. The low realm and slow speed of the netherworld naturally bear the brunt and become the first to be killed. When Shenrun and more than a dozen shaped demons just showed their skills and wantonly pursued Mingxiu, Yi Tian came to him in a flash.
Master!
Shenrun called to Yi Tian after sweeping away the swordlight and killing dozens of Mingxiu.
Yi Tian nodded slightly and said, "The direction of the fog sea in Mabe is tight.
I have arranged 3 people to rush back to support.
You also take the demon family Taoist friends to go. Just give them to me."
"Yes, Master."
Shenrun didn't dare to neglect it.
He promised and immediately greeted the more than a dozen transformed monsters. Then he didn't wait for the monsters to return, so he directly performed the great movement and rushed to Mabe.
Yi Tian took a look at the battlefield ahead.
There are still many flesh and bones absconding, but Yi Tian has no idea to continue chasing them, although it is easy to kill them. Because there are so many high-level skeletons and ghosts at large, I just ignore those skeletons and ghosts, and only start to repair the bones and ghosts attached to the flesh.
It's easy to think that my unique killing magic power is only effective for the bones and ghosts attached to the flesh.
In that case, if Mingxiu knows this secret script, he may never have a chance to use this unique killing method in the future. With this in mind, Yi Tian issued instructions one by one, and the half-step Xinjing martial soul puppets who pursued and killed Mingxiu stopped chasing and killing, but temporarily let go of those Mingxiu and rushed forward quickly. Then Yi Tian followed up in a flash, but in the process, Yi Tian quietly put away his mask. The martial spirit puppet of the half-step god was much faster than most of the nether cultivation. Just a few minutes later, nearly 100,000 flesh and bone-attached nether cultivation were intercepted and began to hide from the front and side.
And Yi Tian also came to the direction of Mingxiu's progress and showed his body shape.
Mingxiu, who was frightened by Yi Tian's death, had no time to think more.
His first reaction was to seek good luck and avoid bad luck.
He turned around one after another, avoided the blocking forces in the front and the north, and fled to the southwest. The war was defeated like a mountain. Coupled with the impact of these physical and bone-attached netherworld practices, a large number of other physical and bone-attached netherworld practices also turned to the southwest along the reverse direction they fled.
At this time, Yi Tian still didn't do it again.
His figure flashed and disappeared from his place. Yi Tian, who was invisible, quietly gave those puppets a huge thunder when he was mixed in the group of martial spirit puppets. Each martial spirit puppet carries 4 or 5 thunderbolts in his arms and holds another one in his hand. He drives the flesh and bone attached Mingxiu mixed with those skeleton Mingxiu all the way.
Leave it to Yi.
Yen Daoyu takes the temple to pursue Mingxiu in other directions, so as not to hurt the temple disciples by mistake when Yi displays his magic power.
Immediately, Yi Tian appeared in front of Yen Yunyang who was chasing Mingxiu. Thank you for reminding me. Yen Yunyang didn't know where she was.
She thanked her and sent a message to the old woman of the Demon King. They quickly left here with the temple disciples to the south.
Yi Tian preached again and asked several armies in the Maitreya Palace to stop hunting temporarily.
On the other hand, he moved his mind and drove the martial spirit puppet to quickly kill the team of Mingxiu. At this time, he went out again and quietly took out the ghost mask and held it in his hand. At the same time, his body flashed and chased many puppets who were covering up the mixed army of skeleton bone-attached netherworld and flesh bone-attached netherworld. It was not surprising that those flesh body-attached bone nether practices entered the influence of the ghost face mask. The fleeing flesh body-attached bone nether practices exploded one after another, which was a mess of flesh and blood. At this time, many martial soul puppets also detonated the thunder in their hands. Boom! 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 The explosion sound became one, which was even more amazing than Tian's previous momentum of using a ghost face mask to detonate the body with bones. This time, the corpses were flying everywhere, not only who possessed bones in the flesh, but also a large number of skeleton-possessed bones. I don't know whether Tian is cruel enough or those martial spirit puppets are cruel enough. Under Tian's secret inspiration, those martial spirit puppets have some special ways to stimulate Thunderbolt. They didn't throw them after they were fired, but after the mana was fired, they still held them in their hands, and then quickly rushed into the skeleton-attached netherworld group, which was similar to a suicide attack. With the continuous roar, those skeletons and bones repaired and flew, while the martial soul puppets were not damaged. This kind of defense is so strong that it is a magic weapon. The martial soul puppet will not be affected in the face of such a degree of bombardment. After a round, those martial spirit puppets secretly took out the second thunderbolt. Another explosion began. And this process is not batch after batch. The boundaries explode very clearly, and those martial spirit puppets can't do it so neatly. The whole explosion process continues all the time, as if in a cycle. On the battlefield, the body with bones is exploding, and the skeleton with bones is exploding. In the flying flesh and bones, even people nearby can't tell how these explosions happened, let alone monks hundreds or thousands of miles away. There was a great noise here, and the place where Tian passed roared constantly. No matter any kind of bone-attached meditation, it was also hard to escape the fate of being exploded. Because of Tian's previous achievements, the idea that Tian can detonate the practice of meditation has become a kind of inertia, although the movement here has shocked many people. However, whether the monks of Shueiyue sect or the monks of the temple, including the great monks of Yupu territory, they just glanced at it and ignored it. Oh, Dante is there. Naturally, he is finishing his explosive Ming cultivation. What's good about this? He can't learn it. Rounds of explosions continued. When the martial spirit puppets ran out of thundering thunder, Tian hit his body again, called those martial spirit puppets together and continued to send thundering thunder. Then the explosion continued. But in the end, few people paid attention to Tian's situation. It's no wonder that he killed so many Mingxiu that everyone has been used to it. Especially the great friars of the temple and Shueiyue sect, they have only focused on chasing and killing Mingxiu and striving to expand the war results. Before they came to the Earth Star, whether it was in the Water Moon or in the temple, those great friars took it for granted that the rebuilt Mithraea Palace might not have any strength except that the Dante was extremely powerful. The entry of Shui Yuzong and the temple into the Earth Star is definitely a great help to the Mithraea Palace, and will even play a decisive role in the war against the Netherworld. However, when they arrived here, with the start of the war, the Shueiyue sect, the temple and the Mithraea Palace made a comparison in the war to kill Mingxiu. They were stunned to find how ridiculous the original idea was. On the side of Shueiyue sect and the temple, in addition to the great lethality shown by the great friar Yupu territory, ordinary disciples were completely defeated by the disciples of the Mithraea Palace. Not to mention those martial spirit puppets and monsters, these are not included in the list of disciples. Just talk about the disciples of Huashan realm and Yuanying realm. On the side of the Mithraea Palace, they rushed into the team of Mingxiu. They were like chopping melons and vegetables. They were dead bodies at their fingertips. Those Mingxiu didn't seem to have any power to return their hands. They were even slaughtered by others. Not to mention, the Mithraea palaces created one by one have received so many disciples from Huashanjing and Yuanying in such a short time, and their number has even far exceeded that of the temple and Shueiyue sect. What shocked them even more was that among the disciples of the Mithraea palace, they found the figure of the great friar of Yupu territory, and the old man of Yupu territory named Shinran seemed to be particularly awed by Tian, obeyed his words, came and went at once. More than a dozen of his pet spirits are all monsters. This has caused a deep sense of frustration to the old Shui monster, who has only one big eagle pet for many years. All kinds of reasons added together, so that the great friars of Shui's sect and the temple had a feeling that they had never felt before. If Shui's sect and the temple didn't come up with some results in this war, it seems that their arrival at Earthstar this time will completely become soy sauce and refuge. Then there is not even a joint effort between his sect and the Maitreya Palace, let alone become the main force against the nether cultivation as he thought before.
The pursuit and killing continued all the time.
All the disciples of Shui's sect, temple and Maitreya Palace rose up and Yuyong pursued and killed all the way. At this time, the body bone-attached nether cultivation is better, and the situation of those skeleton bone-attached nether cultivation is worse. These nether cultivation who are used to in the nether chi dreamland have no nether chi to supplement mana for a long time, and the strong sunlight weakens their soul power. Their strength is slowly decreasing, their combat power is gradually decreasing, and their speed is becoming slower and slower. With each passing day, this chase became more like destroying the withered and decaying. At this time, Tian has also changed his strategy. After showing that he can also finish the skeleton-attached bone meditation, he finally released his mountain and river seal.
The mountain and river seal turned into a 40 to 50 mu area and flew quickly in the air. It always covered the heads of those fleeing Mingxiu. The mountain and river seal went up, down, left and right.
More than 2,000 martial soul puppets followed closely. All the Mingxiu suppressed by the mountain and river seal, whether the body attached to the bone or the skeleton attached to the bone, were swept away by these martial soul puppets. Where the huge shadow of Shanhian is cast, the Mingxiu will try his best to have a nightmare, and then fall into the boundless darkness forever.
The power of this treasure is so strong.
Thousands of miles away, Yan Zhongkai, who was also chasing Mingxiu, felt the situation on Tian's side and stopped to watch for a moment.
It's amazing how many and powerful the Dan Emperor's means are. It's hard to see that these are also handed down by the Sui Emperor.
Yan Zhongkai felt waves when he looked at the powerful mountain and river seals and the martial spirit puppets who half changed the divine realm. Originally, he thought Tian was already very strong, but this big seal magic weapon that seemed to produce a strong gravity field made him refresh his understanding of the Maitreya Palace again. From this point of view, maybe the Dan Emperor doesn't have to enter the Jade and Pu realm. As long as he realizes the body of God, there are absolutely few forces in the universe that can compete with the Maitreya Palace.
Maybe Fanzong is one.
Yan Zhongkai, who had been to many spiritual regions, secretly measured it in his heart.
There are fewer and fewer Ming practitioners fleeing in flight. Look at the few remaining Ming practitioners.
Many big friars in Yupu territory no longer hide from the back, but flash one after another and use the great movement technique to reach the front of Ming practitioners. It took less than half an hour for both sides to attack back and forth, and the remaining less than 200,000 Mingxiu was finally killed. This time, almost all the 10 armies of Mingxiu were destroyed. Only those golden bones that have reached the state of Mingzuan can escape.
The rest turned into real bodies.
Dan Di Taoist friend, the strength of the Maitreya Palace is beyond Yan Yunyang's imagination, and Mingxiu doesn't seem to be as strong as she imagined. Yan Yunyang said with a smile after several meetings. Yi Tian shook his head slightly and said, "There is no time for Yan Daoyu to deal with the underworld, but Yi has fought with the underworld for many times. The size of the underworld and the number of underworld have exceeded imagination." As he spoke, Yi Tianchao pointed in the distance. The fog sea 3,000 miles away is the stronghold of the Ming clan. If he expected, there must be a large number of Ming practitioners in it, and those who fled must have fled there. In addition to preparing to attack and kill the people, the previous 10 armies must also have plans to take over the Ming practitioners in the Fog Sea in Ma Bei. Otherwise, such a number of skeleton-attached bones would not easily escape from the spirit of the Ming come out of it. Hearing the speech, Yan Yunyang silently reflected the Fog Sea mentioned by Yi Tian, and then nodded. Sure enough, as the Taoist friend of the Red Emperor said, although the Fog Sea has a strong inhibitory effect on the divine mind, I still felt that there are dozens of golden meditation practitioners in the periphery of the Fog Sea.
Their accomplishments are roughly equivalent to those of the great monks in Yupu territory?
Yi Tiandao said, yes, Jingu Mingxiu is the Ming respect of the Ming family, and its strength is comparable to that of the great friars of the human Jade Pu territory, but these Jingu Ming Xiu are definitely not the strongest strength of Ming Xiu. There are at least one or several Ming emperors in Ye's underworld, and the Ming emperor is equivalent to the existence of the great power of the human Heavenly Palace territory. The Heavenly Palace is the existence that Jade and Pu cannot compete with. Hearing that there might be such a level of meditation in the underworld, Yin Yunyang could not help frowning slightly. At this time, Morong Jun suddenly said, "Dante Taoist friend, but we have to stop the spread of the fog sea anyway. The fog sea spreads so fast that I'm afraid one day, the Earth star will be completely covered by the dark fog. At that time, it will really be the world of the Ming family." "Don't worry, Taoist Morong, this matter is already in Ye's planning.
But the time is not ripe yet.
If there is a ghost emperor in the dark fog, you may suffer a great loss if you enter it rashly. When we are ready, we will pull out these fog sea strongholds one by one,"
Yi Tian said in a deep voice. Morong Jun asked, "I don't know what Dan Di said about planning."
Yi Tian glanced at the fog sea and said, "He's own, a disciple of the temple and Shueiyue sect, came to Earthstar for support. Naturally, Yi should try his best to be responsible for the safety of the two disciples of Bao Shang and be responsible for their lives. On the one hand, he needs to provide some resources for the two disciples. On the other hand, Yan Daoyu, Shui Daoyu, and Yao Wang Daoyu in the temple are injured and can't give full play to their peak strength. Yi needs some time to refine pills for him we heal, try to let them recover more strength, and then deal with Mingxiu. Third, it's Ye's personal affair. This time, he went to Fengsuan spiritual region and rescued some former disciples of Qingming Blessed Land and Lingshu Blessed Land.
Their cultivation has been abandoned and they are seriously injured. Yi needs some time to treat them.
As for the last point, Yi is not very eager to launch an attack on those fog seas, but it is because the more the dark qi in the underworld is poured into the fog sea, it will reduce the concentration of the dark qi in the underworld. Yi is taking money from the bottom of the pot to make those dark qi come back. No matter how much impact it can have on the underworld, it will cause losses in the underworld, and they will release the dark qi, the more losses, and Yi will collect it together.
Yi Daoyu has a way to collect Ming Qi? Morong Jun asked in surprise. Exactly. Yi Tian nodded back. He didn't say the time of the field.
If the field was not successfully arranged in the end, wouldn't it be a great disgrace?
In the end, I couldn't succeed.
Now there are a large number of monks. Even if all of them are collected with dark stones, it will take a long time at most.
Yi Tian didn't want to block all the other 6 entrances to the underworld, but the time is really premature.
Even if 5 are blocked and only the last one is left, the underworld can still mobilize a large number of underworld practices from the last entrance. At that time, it is likely that the decisive battle in the underworld will come in advance. Now Yi Tian has not made the necessary preparations. Hearing Yi Tian nodding for confirmation, Morong Jun didn't continue to ask Yi Tian what method to use, but sighed, "It's an eye-opener when you first arrive at the Earth Star. It's really a big world and there's no end to learning."
He, Taoist Morong praised me. Let's go back to the border of China and make some preparations. As for the same sect of Shueiyue sect, Yi will introduce you later. Let's arrange disciples here to clean the battlefield.
Yi Tian said with a smile, and then briefly introduced the matter of Ming Xiu's storage and bone attachment. Even if Yi Tian can't use up all the resources of the Ming family, he must take them away, otherwise Ming Xiu will take them away. Such a thing is absolutely not allowed by Yi Tian. Shueiyue sect and the high-level disciples of the temple took part in the battle, but most of the disciples did not participate. At this time, they just came into use. The big friars in Yupu territory of the two sects released the magic weapon cave to let these friars clean the battlefield. Naturally, there are disciples of the Maitreya Palace at the border. Because the front line is too long, it also needs considerable manpower to clean the battlefield. You Taoist friends, after everything is done here, you will be stationed in the desert on the western line. Yi Imoyu will go back to the Maitreya Palace to refine pills for the 3 Taoist friends and place our disciples. It may take a long time, so you will bother. Yi Tian naturally won't wait for the battlefield to be cleaned up. He said to the 2 great monks of Yupu territory, then he went to the back of the golden eye god carving and returned to the Maitreya Palace.
The 3 wounded monks of Yupu territory in the temple naturally wanted it and gave it away one after another. At this time, the battle in the Fog Sea in Mabe was over. Ningxiu was ready to attack the weak disciples of the Maitreya palace, but after Shen Run and others returned in time, he left countless bodies and returned to the fog again. The situation over there has been settled, and Yi Tian doesn't worry about going back. He just sends a messenger to Morong Chuchu and briefly says about the Shueiyue sect in Fangsu and Lingyu. Then Morong Jun was arranged to receive and settle the personnel of Shueiyue sect and Temple sect on behalf of the Maitreya palace.
After all, the Maitreya palace is the landlord, so what should be done is still to be done.
Soon, the golden eye eagle returned to the foot of Falei Peak, and his figure jumped from the eagle's back to the ground.
Let the dragon demon come and meet.
Yi Tian gave an order to Fang Zhong, who came to meet him, and then released 2 magic weapons cave. One was inhabited by Qin Luo Ir and Shen Cheng's mother and daughter, while the other was inhabited by 263 disciples rescued from the land of spiritual emptiness and bliss. The doors of the 2 magic weapons cave were all closed.
Yi Tian ignored Qin Luo's god.
Anyway, when they arrived at the Maitreya palace, they were free to do whatever they wanted.
This is the place where they are absolutely safe. He went directly into the magic weapon cave where the disciples were.
Shifu, where have we been? Is it the square-inch spiritual realm? Seeing Yi Tian coming in, the people immediately looked at Yi Tian, and one of the disciples asked weakly.
This is no longer the square-inch spiritual realm, but the holy spiritual realm, that is, the Earth Star. Now it is absolutely safe. The Holy Land has been destroyed by the Master.
Xing'anzi, the ancestor of the Holy Land, has been killed by the Master. Except for some disciples who are outside the Holy Land, all the others have been killed. Although some people are lucky to escape this robbery, they will kill the upper-range spiritual realm and cut the grass completely as a Master in the future get rid of the root and let the spirit empty and blessed land get rid of the name. Yi Tian glanced at the people with concern and said slowly. Master, our personal hatred is small, and the hatred of Qingming blessed land is the big thing.
However, the disciples are still very happy when they hear the news of the destruction of Lingshu blessed land. The pale Murphy bit his teeth and said,
Don't worry, I will repay you for the revenge of the blessed land of Qingming.
When things happen to the stars of Qingming, I will pay attention to the inch spiritual domain above.
I will uproot all the sects who attack the blessed land of Qingming and leave no chickens and dogs.
This is the Maitreya palace of the Earth Star. When you get better, I will take you everywhere. This will be your home in the future.
Yi Tian patted Murphy on the shoulder and said, Shifu, although the disciples have suffered a lot, they still look at ease, but Shifu is so busy outside. In order to seriously damage the Maitreya palace and avenge Qingming's blessed land, he worked hard and went to Lingshu's blessed land to rescue us.
Shifu, the disciples thank Shifu.
Murphy said here, struggling to kowtow to Yi Tian. The other disciples are also excited to give Yi Tian a big gift, but Yi Tian how to let them. After all, these disciples are inconvenient to move, and some are even difficult to climb. With a slight release of his magic power, he forcibly stopped the people's movements. God, the dragon is coming. At this time, the voice of the dragon demon came in from the outside. Hearing this sound, the Murphy fish on the ground was stunned and had to climb back to hide behind other disciples. But before he could hide, the dragon demon came in with a big stride, God. As soon as these 2 words were spoken, the dragon demon who had stepped in saw the Maitreya palace disciples and Murphy fish who were dodging in the hall. He suddenly stared, walked quickly over and put his hand on the Murphy's shoulder. The Murphy subconsciously turned back, and a pale face leaked in the dragon demon's sight. It's you, boy. How did you become such a bear? The dragon demon loosened his hand and asked loudly.
Father-in-law, it's me.
Murphy whispered back.
Don't call me father-in-law.
When you kidnapped my daughter, we were enemies, and now my daughter has disappeared.
Where can I talk about my father-in-law?
Lao Long still looks angry because of the past.
At this time, Yi Tian said, Lao Long, I brought you here to meet your son-in-law.
After all, your daughter is just missing, and there is no evidence to prove that she is gone. Therefore, in the end, the matter of looking for your daughter will fall on non-fish, but behind non-fish is the Maitreya palace.
Think about the probability if the Maitreya Palace helps you find your daughter. Oh, my god, the dragon knows that even if there is no Murphy fish, the Maitreya Palace will go all out. The god's character, the dragon knows. The non-fish is also good, but at that time, the dragon was also dead-headed and focused on the blood and opposed the mixing of fish and dragons, so... Alas, now there are no daughters. If Long Yi can come back safely, even if he spent all his cultivation, the dragon will feel happy. I'm glad, said the old dragon, as if it was going to rain. Father-in-law, when the son-in-law is well, he will be responsible for finding Yi back. For so many years, the son-in-law has been thinking about him all the time. Murphy sobbed. Well. First take care of the wound. God, if you can find your daughter, the old dragon is willing to be a palace-protecting beast in the Maitreya Palace all the time. The anger in the dragon demon's heart no longer exists at this time. Seeing Murphy fish, he immediately thought of his daughter. As he said, if you can really find your lost daughter, what's wrong with others? Old dragon, you have seen the non-fish. They have no mana now. They are no different from ordinary people. They need to eat and drink water. They can't eat enough in prison. During this time, everything about diet will be arranged for you. Whether they can get their daughter back depends on when the non-fish people can take good care of themselves. Tian smiled and said that in fact, he could arrange anyone to do these trivial things of eating, drinking, and lassa properly. But he knew the things between Murphy fish and Old Dragon. Old Dragon always had a grudge against Murphy fish, and just took this opportunity to let them repair their feelings in those years. After this matter was arranged, Tian arranged 4 martial spirit puppets to guard outside the magic weapon cave. He said hello to everyone and left the house. Out of the magic weapon cave, Tian turned and entered the magic weapon cave where Qin Luo was. In the sight, Qin Luoshan, Ear, Cicada and Chang all surrounded the sleeping chestnut and sat cross-legged. Even when he came in, no one opened his eyes. The sun is coming out from the west. Tian feels a little strange. It's okay for others to say, but Chen Cheng never cultivates. How can he sit cross-legged and meditate like this? He felt it a little and was surprised to find that Chen Xing, who had a slight fluctuation in mana a few days ago, had 3 levels of cultivation in the cave environment. The mana of Cicada, Qin Luo and Ear are also much better than before. Qin Luoshan is the most obvious. She has reached the peak of Longmen territory and is almost catching up with Ear. It seems that the Zen realm sent by Xiao Lizi is really good for low-level friars, especially the lower the realm, the greater the benefit. After some induction, he quietly shone through the sky and looked at the little chestnut. Just like that day, under the light of Yuantian's eyes, Xia Lizi's whole body still radiated a misty golden Taoist realm, and Qin Luoshan 4 people were just within the Taoist realm. If Ning Yao's body is successfully remodeled, even from scratch, he should be promoted quickly in the Zen realm. After all, Ning Yao is also a great monk in the Jade Pu realm. With the help of the best pill, you will get twice the result with half the effort. Thinking so, his heart was really a little urgent, but I don't know how long it will take for these things to end, but now I can only make full use of the fragment time. Thinking so, he did not disturb these people in the cultivation, but gently hit the magic weapon on the door of the cave, quietly opened the door prohibition, and then he flashed into a spacious room in the cave and opened the sound insulation prohibition. In this way, he will put thunder inside and will not affect the cultivation of old and young beauties outside. Next, Tian began his alchemy journey in this magic weapon cave with 5 times the time field. As for the outside world, there are the great friars of Shueiyue sect in the temple, as well as Shen Run and many disciples of the Maitreya Palace. Tian has nothing to worry about. If something big happens, Shen Run and his disciples can find him through the messenger. Time passes in peace day by day. Nearly 10 days passed. On this day, Tian, who had always closed the sound insulation field, finally waved away, and then he came out of the room. Ah! Brother Tian. Tian. When did you come in? In the hall of the cave, Pang Qing and Pang Chan are still practicing with their eyes closed, while Qin Luo and Ear have awakened from the practice and are whispering something. They are stunned when they suddenly see Tian coming out of the room inside the magic weapon cave. Hee, I've been here for some time. I didn't bother you when you were practicing, so I lived in the back room all the time, eh? Yi Tian briefly explained a few words, then his eyes suddenly coagulated, looked at Qin Luo and Ir in surprise, and said with a flash of surprise, You two have quietly broken through to the Golden Elixir realm? Yes, is it difficult to break through the Golden Elixir realm? Sister Luoshen and I will condense the Golden Elixir unconsciously. Ir said with a smile. Yes, Yi Tian, this practice is very strange. It seems that he had a big dream and then made a breakthrough unconsciously. Qin Luoshen said happily. Me too, I also had a big dream and broke through. Ir also said. What dreams did you have? Yi Tian asked curiously, sitting next to Qin Luo. His intuition must have something to do with the Zen realm emitted by Little Chestnut. For him, up to now, this Zen realm is still so strange. Qin Luo seemed to be recalling, and said slowly, I dreamt that I came to a golden flower cluster. The scenery around me was so beautiful, all of which were golden. Those flowers were so beautiful and fragrant. I looked at them one by one and smelled them one by one. Then a flower suddenly turned into a golden light and entered my dantian. I felt a burst of fever, then woke up, and then found myself congealed golden elixir. I'll go. Is that okay? Yi Tianmu was stunned. It's me, brother Yi Tian. Listen to me, my dream is more strange than Sister Luoshen. At this time, Ir couldn't wait to interrupt. Well, it's your turn, you say? Yi Tian looked at Ir while pondering Qin Luo's dream. He was also curious about what dream Ir had. My dream is strange. It is also a golden world. In that world, there are countless brother Yi Tian, some hanging in the sky, some hanging in the tree, some hanging on the grass. I looked all over the world to see which brother Yi Tian was the real brother. Finally, suddenly, brother Yi Tian flew out of the sun and flew into my dantian, then he woke up, and found that he was frozen like Sister Luoshen. Ir said quickly, with a cute voice. This dream? Yi Tian is very speechless. What broken dream? Hanging in that world? By the way, brother Yi Tian, you've been in the cave. Have you overheard me talking to Sister Luoshen? Suddenly, Ir suddenly asked with a changed look. Didn't hear. Yi Tian waved his hand and was still analyzing their dreams. Obviously, the dreamland you entered can also be regarded as a dream, but you have strong resolution and know that it is only a dreamland, not a dream. It's hard to get out of the illusion unless you wake up. He looks different from Qin Luo and Ir, but there is one thing in common, that is, the color is the same as the golden world. Is it the reason why the phase is born from the heart? He practiced the idea of Sui Huang view, so a round of red sun entered the body to achieve Yuanying. Qin Luoshen's maiden mind likes flowers and grass, so she dreams of a sea of golden flowers. But Ir is a little flower maniac, so all she dreams about is herself. From this view, the Zen realm is really powerful. It can peep into people's hearts and forcibly improve the realm. Really, didn't you hear? When Yi Tian's mood fluctuated, Ir asked with a pursed mouth. Can I cheat you? After entering the cave, I have been refining pills in the cave and started the sound insulation prohibition, so you didn't find me and I didn't hear your dialogue. It's so simple. Yi Tian was amused by Ir's worried expression. Then he whispered to Qin Luo and asked, What did you say? Why would Ir mind so much? Did I hear you? Forget it, I'll believe you once. When Ir answered, Qin Luoshen said to Yi Tian almost at the same time, Ir is worried. She asked me, will brother Yi Tian be pregnant with your child like this when he enters the Dantian field? Yi Tian almost died when he heard the speech. Where is this? Seeing Yi Tian's expression, Qin Luoshen quickly turned his head, turned to one side and giggled. Hey, what are you two laughing at? Are you hiding something from me? Whispering behind my back, such an obvious situation immediately attracted Ir's attention. He looked at Qin Luo God and Yi Tian, and asked mistily. Your brother Yi Tian said you have a loud voice. Don't wake up the cicada and the green cicada. Qin Luoshen mended the leaky pot and perfunctorily said. Oh. Is that so? Ir murmured and looked at Cheng and cicada quietly. At this time, suddenly the cicada was shocked, and a breath much stronger than his own cultivation was instantly released, which made Yi Tian get up and look at the cicada in surprise. Then he put his finger on his lips and hissed softly. He said to Qin Luo and Ear, "Don't talk anymore. The cicada is condensing the golden elixir." Ah! Hearing Yi Tian's voice, Qin Luo and Ear were stunned. Isn't that weird? They just condensed the golden elixir, and then the cicada, who didn't even reach the peak of Longmen territory, condensed the golden elixir. Has it become so easy to condense the golden elixir? Although they are surprised, they both know that they can't disturb each other too much when they break through the realm, otherwise they may cause serious consequences to each other. They were about to hold their breath and wait carefully, but suddenly the cicada, who was supposed to be condensing the golden elixir, suddenly opened his eyes and looked around as if nothing had happened. When they saw Yi Tian, they suddenly jumped up and jumped into Yi Tian's arms. "Master, I had a dream just now." Sure enough, it is still related to Zen. Yi Tian immediately had a judgment in his heart, but he didn't know what the cicada's dream was. "Ah, did you dream too? Tell your little sister what you dreamed of." Before Yi Tian asked, the naughty Ear had gathered together and kept asking. "I dreamed of my master." The cicada looked back and said. Yi Tian's heart was shocked. She was such a little girl and her own disciple. How could she have such a mind as Ear? Was she so precocious? He just had this psychological activity, but Ear asked happily again, "Did you also dream that brother Yi Tian was hanging on the tree in the grass?" "No, I dreamt that master gave me a lot of fairy jade." "A lot of fairy jade?" "Those fairy jade are golden and delicious to eat." The cicada looked lovely and obsessed, as if she was still immersed in the previous dream. "Did anything enter your dantian later?" Ear continued to ask curiously. "Ah, little sister Ear, how do you know something has entered my dantian?" The cicada looked at Ear with worship on her face and asked. "I pinched my fingers and calculated it." "Ha! Speak quickly." "It won't be a big top-grade fairy jade?" asked Ear, coaxed and deceived. Ear tilted his head and thought about it and continued, "I don't know if it's the best, but the immortal jade is really big and golden. When it fell from the sky, I thought it would be smashed to death by the immortal jade. As a result, when it hit me, a light changed into my dantian." When Ear asked again, Yi Tian waved his hand to stop talking, and then he said, "Chan Chan, you have condensed the golden elixir and become a real monk in the golden elixir realm. You are the youngest and shortest monk in the golden elixir realm that my master has ever seen. The future is unlimited. Little Chestnut is a big treasure. If you continue to practice around it in the future, you may have greater luck." "I have condensed the golden elixir? What is the golden elixir?" the cicada asked with a confused face. Yi Tian was speechless for a while. Yes, he never told him whether there was a golden pill or not. He taught her another kind of boxing of physical cultivation, but this guy actually ended up with a pill. If those friars who studied hard all their life and couldn't even see the path of Longmen, would they be angry and spit blood 3 liters and fall to the ground and die? Yi Tian naturally won't waste too much time on such a simple thing, because he has more important things to do. He glanced at Qin Luoshan and Ear and said, "You two can give the cicada a golden pill. Look, the cicada has got a pill. You two should work hard." After that, Yi Tian opened the door of the cave and flashed out the magic weapon of the cave. Qin Luoshan and Ear wanted to say something, but Yi Tian has opened the door again. After that, according to Yi Tian's meaning, they began to tell the cicada about cultivation in detail. Out of the magic weapon cave, Yi Tian goes to the magic weapon cave where Murphy Fish is located. In addition to the martial spirit puppets he left to protect, there are 4 disciples of the Maitreya Palace. Palace Master. Seeing Yi Tian appear, the 4 disciples looked shocked and bowed to Yi Tian. "Well, you've worked hard." Yi Tian nodded to them and then walked into the magic weapon cave. In the cave, 263 disciples are resting in various rooms. During this period of general care, the disciples are in good mental state, and their bodies are not as weak as before. Some disciples without broken legs have even moved freely. Yi Tian summoned many disciples and gave each one a pill. He said, "I have refined the pill for the teacher." After taking it, the pill will repair itself in a short time, and the injuries of the rest of my body will recover as before.
After taking the pill for 24 hours, I should rest at ease and recuperate.
After 24 hours, my mana will gradually return to the state when I was abandoned.
Master, can you recover to the previous state? Great! Hearing Tian's words, many disciples immediately became excited.
2 of these disciples used to practice in Huashan realm, and the rest were in Jindan realm, Yuanying realm and Longmen realm.
Although you have different levels, they are all happy to hear that you don't have to practice again, and their previous depression has been cleared away.
It seems that the whole world is flying again, with birds singing and flowers fragrant. After watching the disciples take the pill, Tian gestured and took out more than 200 Shumi rings, followed by the magic weapon of half-immortal soldiers, green cloud shuttle, dragon armor, fairy jade, and pill. The same cultivation resources and magic weapons were taken out and piled up on the ground. Then he looked at many disciples and said, Master has something important to do later. You should rest here.
After mana is restored, divide these things, and then wait for Master to come back and make arrangements. Yes. Master.
The disciples looked at those resources and felt that the medicine was treating the physical injury. They sent Tian away with gratitude and reluctance.
Divine carving.
Out of the magic weapon, Tian, outside the cave, suddenly appeared beside him. As soon as Tian Lu pondered, he put away the magic weapon cave where Qin Luo and Er were, and then set foot on the carving back. A moment later, Tian had come outside the dark fog in Ma Bei.
At this time, Ma Bei was no longer defending according to the war zone.
Shenron perfectly implemented Tian's deployment and arranged the disciples of Washanjing to stay in the defense area at a certain distance. In this way, both attack and defense are more flexible.
The figure of the divine carving is huge, especially in the high altitude. Tian has just fallen to the ground, and Liao Tungwen has welcomed it. Master. Old 16, how's the situation? Tian asked with a look at the dark fog. Shifu, after the last disastrous defeat, those Ningxiu have been shrank into the dark fog without any movement.
It may be that they have learned the painful lessons of those western strongholds and have not come out of the dark fog.
It seems that they are ready to stick to it. Liao Tungwen briefly introduced. Call out the old 17 and 19. Tian glanced at the magic weapon cave in the war zone and said,
Master, the disciples are waiting for you to summon. Before Liao Tungwen could move, Situ Juanru came out of one of the magic weapons cave. Then Moron, dressed in white, appeared in another magic weapon cave nearby.
You've worked hard. Yi Tiancheng nodded and said.
Shifu went back and forth to the square-inch spiritual region, attracted strong assistance, turned the Earth Star disaster, and worked hard to eradicate the underworld. Shifu was really hard. Situ Juanru hugged his fist and sang a hymn for Yi Tian as usual.
Yi Tian smiled and didn't criticize him anymore.
Instead, he directly asked, Tell me about the completion of the task during this period.
Yes, Master.
Situ Juanru immediately agreed and said, During this time, Tiangong branch has refined more than 7,000 martial spirit puppets in the magic weapon cave with a flow rate of 5 times, and will soon be able to complete the 30,000 tasks assigned by Master. 11,000 Huafan stone garments and 7,000 Xianin stone garments have been refined. Now the Xianin stone has been exhausted. 3,000 pieces of dragon armor and 6,000 pieces of black dragon armor.
The above tasks are our maximum refining capacity day and night. Yi Tian nodded with satisfaction and said, You've worked hard.
In such a short time, the task has been completed very well.
I'd like to give you a special reward.
Each disciple of Tiangong branch has 1,000 Xianyu and 2 pills for auxiliary cultivation. The elder of Tiangong branch has 100,000 Xianyu and 5 pills for auxiliary cultivation. The old 17 has 500,000 Xianyu and 5 pills made by the master himself. Thank you, Master. Situ Juanru looked happy when he heard the speech. The immortal jade was secondary, and the most precious was the pill.
Tiangong sect uses utensils to enter the Tao.
Refining utensils is also a kind of cultivation, and in the magic weapon cave with 5 times the flow rate of time, the time of cultivation has increased a lot.
The overall strength of Tiangong branch has been greatly improved compared with before. Now Shifu has given many pills, which will play a great catalytic role in the improvement of disciples' strength. Yi Tian nodded again and said, as a reward from the disciples, your second elder martial brother will come here to count the quantity with you and give it to you. However, next, you have to refine 6 Huafan stones, which are larger than those used to suppress the entrance of the underworld here. The other 6 entrances of the underworld have not been explored yet. You should be fully prepared. If you find that the Huafan stones are not big enough, you should continue to improve. There's no problem with this. At present, other tasks are not so tense and should be completed soon. Master, Huafan stone clothes and Xianin stone clothes are used together. Now Xianin stones have been exhausted, and refining Huafan stone clothes has lost its significance. In addition to Huafan stones, please show me the key refining tasks in the next step. Situ Juanru nodded slightly. Yi Tianlu pondered, focus on refining armor defense magic weapons. Try to refine dragon armor. Black dragon armor and Tunlom armor can be ranked behind. You can refine them according to the materials. Have the newly refined puppets ever absorbed the blood soul of Mayfly? Situ Juanru immediately replied, all of them have been sent to the Sea of Blood for improvement, of which about 500 have not been improved, and the rest have reached the combat effectiveness of half-stepping into the divine realm. Well, in addition to the 500 that have not been promoted, Tiangong branch will leave another 1,000 martial soul puppets and give the rest to the teacher. Yi Tian said with satisfaction again. Situ Juanru thought about things very comprehensively, which made Yi Tian feel very comfortable. Situ Juanru naturally didn't say anything. He immediately counted the quantity. The other martial spirit puppets were loaded into Shumi ring and handed over to Yi Tian. Yi Tian takes Zumaji and looks at Morong, who has been waiting for a long time. Clearly, how many magic weapons in the field have been arranged in 5 times the time? Back to the palace master, 18 have been arranged. Morong said with a clear gesture, and 18 magic weapons caves appeared on the ground. Yi Tian looked at Situ Juanru and Liao Tungwen, old 16 and old 17, take 2 each. Situ Juanru and Liao Tungwen immediately gestured and put away their magic weapons in the cave. Old 17, these are 5 pills made by the master himself. This reward will be given first. Well, go ahead and be busy first. Remember. Turn all stones quickly. Thank you, Master. Situ Juanru looked happy and gave the result of the jade bottle sent by Yi Tian. Yi Tian sent Situ Juanru away and said to Morong again, clearly, the field branch also takes 2, which is convenient to use. Morong Chuchu naturally has no objection. Of course, the more such things, the better. After Morong clearly put away the 2 magic weapon caves assigned to her by Yi Tian, he also made a gesture and collected the remaining 12 magic weapon caves in the 5-time field into Zumaji. Clearly, the next step is to close the remaining 6 entrances to the underworld in the west and overseas, and then uniformly arrange the fields that absorb the underworld chi. What the field division needs to do is to prepare the materials and fairy jade for these 2 fields, and tell me if there is a gap. Your field division disciples have been working very hard during this time. The reward is carried out according to the Tiangong division, which is also the responsibility of Duan Jingshou count the quantity and distribution. As for your personal reward, it is also the 5 auxiliary cultivation pills I refined. While talking, Yi Tian took out a jade bottle again and gave it to Morong Chuchu. Thank you, Palace Master. Morong was really moved when he saw that the pill also had his own share. Yi Tian smiled and looked at Liao Tungwen, don't worry, there's yours too. Then he sent a jade bottle to Liao Tungwen. The spiritual materials used in these pills are extremely precious. You should strive to improve and enter the jade realm as soon as possible. I'll certainly live up to my high expectations. Liao Tungwen knew that the pill taken out by masters seriously must be very important, and he naturally cherished it in his heart. At the next moment, Yi Tian motioned, took out 500 half-step god puppets and said to Morong clearly, last time you took the pill to enhance your mind, you should be able to recognize these half-step gods martial spirit puppets as masters. During this time, you use your time to recognize these martial spirit puppets as masters to ensure the safety of field branch disciples. Yes. Morong Chuchu only answered, but his voice was full of gratitude.
Although the palace master was not here for many days, he kept his disciples' affairs in mind. Later, Yi Tian looked at Liao Tungwen, old 16, tell me about the refining of your pill.
Liao Tungwen said, because the spiritual materials are precious, the pills are basically refined by Qingshou elixirs.
The other disciples watch and observe, including those refined before. A total of 2,683 pills have been refined to assist monks in different levels, and the success rate is 80%. After hearing this, Yi Tian didn't speak for a long time.
Liao Tungwen was nervous and didn't dare to say anything.
After knowing that he had been breathing for decades, Yi Tiankai looked up at the sky and turned to Liao Tungwen again. The disciples of Tiangong branch have been working very hard these days. No one also rewarded 2 pills and 1,000 pieces of fairy jade. The pills were refined by Taisho branch, and the insufficient part was taken from your second senior brother.
The same is true for fairy jade. Refer to old 17 for your fairy jade reward. Is this appropriate?
Liao Tungwen blushed and couldn't lift his head when he heard the master's praise.
There are about 8,000 disciples in the Taisho branch.
One person has 2 pills, that is, more than 16,000 pills. These days, his Taisho branch has refined less than 3,000 pills in total.
Isn't that hitting him in the face? Yi Tian looked at Liao Tungwen and said wholeheartedly, old 16, if you want to write well, how can you write well without spending pen and ink? If you want to cook well, how can you do it without rice dishes? Alchemy is not a castle in the air, nor is it on paper. You should practice it realistically. As a teacher, you are very clear.
You may be worried about the rate of alchemy and too many spiritual materials. However, as a teacher, I want to tell you that as a teacher, I want to cultivate a large number of Dan teachers in the Taisho branch.
There are many disciples in the Maitreya Palace. The demand for Dan medicine will be extremely huge. Although there are a lot of pills seized, they will eventually be exhausted.
Next, the pill of the Maitreya Palace needs to be refined by your Taisho branch.
I have talked so much about alchemy, but it's just theory. Theory should be applied to practice. If not practice, what's the use of more advanced theory? In alchemy, if the pill furnace is not enough, I'll arrange the old 17 to refine it.
If there are any doubts that are difficult to solve, I'll solve them for you. Confused, if you worry about the lack of spiritual materials, it's not necessary. As he spoke, Yi Tian gestured and a dozen Shumi rings appeared on his hands. This is because I killed a great power in the heavenly palace in the square-inch spiritual realm, destroyed his spiritual void in blessed land, and obtained the medicine garden of that sect. They were all installed in Shumi ring.
You can transplant all these spiritual materials into the magic weapon cave.
Even if you use up all these spiritual materials, you need to cultivate a large number of Dan masters who can really refine high-grade Dan medicine.
Liao Tungwen silently results in Yi Tian's Zumaji.
After casually taking one to recognize the Lord, his divine mind probes into it. When he sees those massive spiritual materials, even as the former leader of a sect, he can't help shaking his heart. Apart from Master, he has never seen so many spiritual materials. Moreover, Master gave him more than 10 pieces of such Zumaji.
There are nearly 100 magic weapons in the medicine garden of the cave.
The number of spiritual materials will definitely exceed your imagination.
What's up? Old 16, are you confident? Yi Tian looked at Liao Tungwen and said. Disciples will not let Shifu down. Liao Tungwen held those Zumaji, bowed deeply to Yi Tian and said. Then he turned and left.
Old 16, you should take another 1,000 martial spirit puppets to ensure the safety of the disciples of Tiangong branch. Then Yi Tian took out another 1,000 martial spirit puppets.
Thank you, Master.
Liao Tungwen bowed deeply again, accepted the martial soul puppet and quickly entered the magic weapon cave.
On the western border of China, in the vast desert, there are 2 camps completely constructed by the magic weapon cave. The camp in the south is the camp of the temple. It is about 3,000 miles away from it. It is the camp of Shueiyue sect. Next to the camp of Shueiyue sect, the Shueiyue branch of the Maitreya Palace is stationed here. The 2 camps echo each other from afar, guarding the defense line of the western border of China to prevent Ming Xiu from doing anything.
At this time, a dark shadow in the sky flew from the northeast to the location where the temple was stationed. Yen Yunyang, who was meditating in the magic weapon cave, sensed the dark shadow, got up quickly and walked out of the door of the magic weapon cave. The prohibition of this magic weapon cave has never been closed, so that she can release her mind at any time and feel the situation of the outside world. Taoist friend of the Red Emperor. Yen Yunyang arched her hand at the golden eye god carving falling from the sky. Yi Tianpiao flew like a swallow and fell lightly. He stepped on the yellow sand without stepping out a trace of footprints. How about Yen Daoyu? Are you still used to Earth Star? Yen Yunyang said with a smile, people who practice are not used to anything. They settle down wherever they go. Although it's the vast yellow sand here, it's much better than hiding underground in the square-inch spiritual realm, dark and frightened. When Yi Tian heard the speech, he said apologetically, the temple suffered revenge from the 8 patriarchal sects in order to protect the Maitreya palace. Yi is very upset about this. Yen Yunyang shook her head slightly and said, you don't have to be so. Actually, there was friction between the temple and the 8 sects, but before Qing'anzi entered the heavenly palace, none of the sects, including those in the Holy Land, was as powerful as the temple, and they were dirty, broken and fought with each other. Therefore, there was no large-scale conflict. The matter of the Maitreya palace was just the last straw. The rapid rise of Yi Daoyu frightened the 8 sects, therefore, under such circumstances, they abandoned their past grievances and contributed to the trend of joining hands. Qing'anzi made a breakthrough at this time, which made the temple in a difficult situation. In fact, there was no matter of the Maitreya palace, and there was a trend of life and death between the temple and the 8 sects, just because the matter of the Maitreya palace broke out in advance. Yi Tian nodded slightly. Yen Daoyu has an open mind, which is really admired by Yi. Anyway, the temple is kind to the Maitreya palace, and Yi is by no means ungrateful. Therefore, Yi must keep this feeling in mind. Now the healing pill of Yen Zhongkai, Shuelao and the King of Medicine has been refined, and they are invited to meet. The matter of taking the pill needs to be explained in person. Hearing the speech, Yen Yunyang brightened her eyes, took out a messenger, whispered a few words, and then urged her manna. Taoist friend of the Red Emperor, take a seat in the cave first, and they should come soon, said Yen Yunyang, leading the way and letting Yi Tian into the magic weapon cave. Just as they sat down, Yen Zhongkai, Shueleagui and the old woman Demon King came in through the gate of the magic weapon cave. After a brief greeting and taking their seats, Yi Tian went straight to the theme and took out 3 jade bottles, 3 colors, 1 cyan, 1 green and 1 white. The 3 colors are nothing more than to distinguish the pills inside. Looking at the 3 jade bottles in Yi Tian's hand, he was also secretly excited by the nature of the great friars in the 3 jade Pu territory. Yi Tian first handed the green jade bottle to Yen Zhongkai and said with a smile, Yen Daoyu, please open it and have a look. Even if Yi Tian doesn't say it, Yen Zhongkai can't wait to see what kind of pill Yi Tian has refined for himself. He knows his injury very well. Although he knows Yi Tian's ability, there should be no absolute almighty man in the world. If it is an ordinary injury, he will naturally have great confidence in the former Dante. If a person can't even see what kind of injury he has suffered, what if he indiscriminately uses ordinary drugs for diagnosis and treatment? According to what Yi Tian said, Yen Zhongkai opened the jade bottle in his hand and poured out the pills inside. He saw 2 pills on his palm. One of them was white, but the other was a little strange. It was a pill he had never seen before. Because this pill has no color, but is transparent. The skin of the pill is transparent and is wrapped with clear liquid. This? The white elixir fragrance overflowed everywhere. You can smell the pleasant elixir fragrance without getting close. However, even if he tried to smell the transparent elixir, he still didn't smell what it was. Yen Zhongkai held the transparent pill and looked carefully, but he didn't see anything after all. Yi Tian seemed to have predicted that Yen Zhongkai would behave like this. He just smiled and looked at Yen Zhongkai fiddling with the pill in his hand. Until Yen Zhongkai put down the pill in his hand and looked at himself, Yi Tiankai smiled and said, Yen Daoyu, the order of taking these 2 pills can't be reversed. After taking the transparent pill for 6 hours, take the white pill. In this way, you can restore your cultivation as before within 12 hours. Hearing the speech, Yen Zhongkai was excited. He looked at Yi Tian with gratitude and said, Dante Taoist friend, Yan's injury is very strange. Even Yen himself can't tell exactly what kind of injury it is. Please also ask Dante Taoist friend to solve my doubts. Yi Tian was so clever that he immediately understood that Yen Zhongkai didn't seem to have much confidence in himself, but he was very eager to cure his injury. If he didn't ask, I'm afraid the other party would always be worried. After a little meditation, Yi Tian said with a smile, Yen Daoyu, when you were injured, were you in a red and black magma-like environment? Ah, Taoist friend of Dante, can you see this? Hearing Yi Tian say so, Yen Zhongkai suddenly stood up and stared at Yi Tian. Then a burst of ecstasy appeared in his eyes. Since Yin I can see it, it should be said that this pill is a symptomatic drug, not a tonic to temporarily suppress his injury or supplement his physical fitness. At that time, he was really trapped in a field full of that kind of things, and the trap time was as long as half a year. From the beginning, Yin knew that kind of things were strange, but he couldn't escape the attack of that kind of things by using magic power anyway. Later, he got out of trouble and returned to the square-inch spirit field. As a result, he found that his body was weak day by day, and his accomplishments fell. Yen Zhongkai continued. Yi Tian nodded again and said, Yen Daoyu, you came to tell you what it is. It is called differently in different places. Some places call it the fire of death, while others call it the ember of robbery. Then, Yi Tian gave Yen Zhongkai some basic knowledge about robbing embers. After Yi Tian finished speaking in detail, Yen Zhongkai suddenly said, it turns out that this thing is the product of the destruction of the world. It's so terrible? It seems that the immortal traces Yen searched for there should be true in 9 cases out of 10. Maybe there are immortal traces after destruction hidden in it? When Yen Zhongkai mentioned the word immortal trace, Yi Tian couldn't help but move in his heart, but the matter involved the temple and even Yen Zhongkai's privacy, and he couldn't ask too much. Just looking at Yen Zhongkai waiting for the following. Yen Zhongkai continued, Yen went through the void and roamed through various spiritual domains to find a way to break through the heavenly palace. He heard about immortal tracks in a place called Xianyuan spiritual domain, so he broke into a dangerous place in the spiritual domain alone, and was trapped in the field. Looking at the layout and intensity of that field alone, it was beyond the ordinary spiritual domain. After being trapped for half a year, Yen was almost desperate no matter what, I couldn't break the field, and I felt that my body was injured and my cultivation was declining day by day. Later, I ventured into the red and black magma and found a secret passage in it, which escaped through the secret passage. According to Yen's conjecture, I'm not the first monk trapped in the field. I should have been trapped before I got through the secret way. Fortunately, the field should have been arranged for too long, so the location of the secret way was incomplete, which made Yen find a way to escape. Now think about it, I'm still terrified. After hearing Yen Zhongkai finish, Yi Tian nodded and said, all the heavenly regions, including all spiritual regions, actually belong to the spiritual domain, and there is also the immortal domain in the spiritual domain. Due to the different space, ordinary friars can't enter the immortal domain at all. However, since there is an immortal domain, there are immortals. The immortal Shou Yuan is eternal, but it doesn't mean immortality. Since there is death, the so-called immortal relics exist, which is completely in line with common sense. Perhaps the dangerous place explored by Yen Daoyu is indeed an immortal relic, maybe. Naturally, Yen heard some legends about immortals, but after all, they are just legends. After that, Yen has realized how much ability he has to do. If he overestimates his strength, he is likely to suffer. Although immortals are the ultimate goal for Yen, they are still too far away from him. At least to explore all this, he has to enter the sky it's after the palace. It's Yen's ambition that nearly caused him to fall. If he didn't meet the Dante, I'm afraid he couldn't even heal his injuries, let alone the heaven palace. The Taoist friends of the Dante don't know, it's that the burning wounds he suffered have been searched for countless methods, but they haven't been cured. After hearing this with a smile, Yi Tian said, not only has it not been cured, because the healer doesn't understand the situation of robbing embers, but it has aggravated the injury. Therefore, quack doctors mistook people. He just inadvertently sighed. After saying that, he suddenly found that the old woman demon king not far away turned red, and then gently lowered his head. Yi Tian immediately understood what was going on. Originally, the Demon King had also given Yen Zhongkai a diagnosis and treatment, and he would not talk much about it. Instead, he turned to the topic and said, the transparent dantian is a kind of water that is used to make the robbery water, which is supplemented by precious material. To heal the wounds on the body, we must first dispel the burning wounds. Then another white pill is to repair the damaged dantian and meridians. It can be said that the pill will eliminate the disease.
Thank you, Emperor Dan.
If you'll excuse me, Yen will go to take Dan to heal his wounds. Then Yen Zhongkai stood up and saluted Yi Tian deeply, and was about to leave.
Yi Tian waved his hand and called, Yen Daoyu, wait a minute.
Yi has a magic weapon cave, which is arranged with 5 times the time field.
I'll lend it to you for your healing.
As he spoke, Yi Tian gestured, and a magic weapon cave 5 times the time field appeared in his hand.
Yen Zhongkai didn't shirk his politeness. He took over the magic weapon cave, nodded to Yi Tian and left straight away.
In the cave, the other 4 great friars in Yupu territory, including Yin Yunyang, all stared at Yin Zhongkai's magic weapon cave until the other party disappeared from the gate of the magic weapon cave. The magic weapon of the 5-time field, the cave, has great attraction to anyone. Yi Tian sighed with emotion, then looked at Yin Yunyang and said, Yen Daoyu, the layout of the 5 times time field takes a lot of time, and the required materials are extremely scarce.
At present, the layout of the Maitreya Palace is also extremely limited.
Well, I have one here, which will be sent to the temple for use. When the disciples of the field branch of the Maitreya Palace arranged the magic weapon cave of the 5 times time field, Yu Daoyu, Shui Daoyu, and Yaowang Daoyu, each will give one to help you become a great road. Yen Yunyang stood up and solemnly took over the magic weapon cave sent by Yi Tian, with an excited look on her face.
Yu Yan, Shui Leagwei and the old woman Yaowang also got up immediately and thanked Yi Tian with hot eyes. When she sat down again, Shui Leagwei and the old woman Yaowang were not doing well.
Yu Yan looked up with some awareness, but found Yen Yunyang looking at herself with a smile. He smiled a few times, then moved his eyes and didn't look at Yen Yunyang again.
He understood what Yen Yunyang meant.
At the beginning, he wanted to leave Fengsuan's spiritual domain and go with Yi Tian to Earth Star.
Among all the great friars in Yupu territory in the temple, only himself opposed it.
Now we can see that the magic weapon cave in the 5 times time field promised by Yi Tian has not been fulfilled. Now, as soon as you give it and borrow it, the temple has 2 magic weapons cave in the 5 times time field. This rare treasure can't be exchanged for any other resources, not to mention 2. Even if there is only 1 such magic weapon cave, putting other caves in the temple will also enjoy the bonus of 5 times the time field. However, they are far from having such a magic weapon.
The cave is convenient to use.
Just through this thing, Yu Yan's affection for Yi Tian burst in an instant. Otherwise, even practitioners are often very realistic. Even if he takes out 5 such magic weapons at one time, Yi Tian naturally has no pressure, but he doesn't do so. He also has his own considerations.
Some of them are not humane. After Yi Tian asked the people to sit down again, he gave the other 2 color jade bottles to Shui Leagwei and the Demon King Old Woman respectively, and then said, the 2 Taoist friends may feel very strange that your injuries are the same. Why didn't you use the same pill to heal your wounds?
Yes, that's my doubt. Shui Leagwei took a red pill in his hand, looked at the green pill in the Demon King's Old Woman's hand, and nodded slightly. Yi Tian patiently explained, although you all use the same method to forcibly improve your cultivation level, you have different physique, different cultivation methods, and different injury severity. Therefore, you refine these 2 pills according to your own situation. These 2 pills could be used in general, but the effect is far better than that of the right medicine, and there is no hidden danger. This pill can not only be cured, the injury can also make up for some lost life yuan. But this is only the first step of healing.
Next, you will refine several pills and take them all. At that time, Shui Daoyu and Demon King Daoyu will not only find all Shou Yuan, but also become a real great monk in Yupu territory. Dante, thank you for your kindness. You gave Shui this life.
As a member of the temple, I am willing to pay you back with this life as long as I don't betray the temple. Hearing the speech, old monster Shui stood up again and said solemnly. The old woman of the Medicine King followed, stood up and said, Old woman, I'd like to report from Yongquan.
Sit down quickly. You 2 Taoist friends need not be polite. There is no time for cultivation. We will deal with many things in the future.
Yi Tian stretched out his hand and made them sit down again.
It's not urgent for you to take medicine to treat your injuries. Yi has several other things to do this time. Wait a minute. With these words, Yi Tian got up and left the magic weapon cave.
When he came to an open space outside the magic weapon cave, Yi Tian gestured, released a magic weapon cave, and then walked in. This time, several beauties who were practicing opened their eyes for the first time.
Brother Yi Tian, you miss me and come to see me. Ear jumped up with joy.
The master should have missed me as a disciple. The cicada beside him was in shape and had directly bumped into Yi Tian's arms. But Qin Luo God was when sitting quietly on the futon, smiling at the scene. Yi Tian gently put the cicada on the ground, smiled and said, "Of course, everyone here wants to, but..." Hearing what Yi Tian said, others didn't think much, but the green on one side turned red and lowered his head.
However, she didn't notice this detail.
She couldn't wait to ask, "But what, does Master want to say that she wants more cicadas?"
Yes, I want more cicadas. Yi Tian smiled. Look, Sister Ear, am I right? The cicada made a face at Ear with satisfaction.
Yi Tian continued, "But this time, when Master comes in, he has an important thing to take Sister Ear out."
Why do you take Sister Ear out? Do you want to do something bad?
That's what boys say when they flirt with their sister on TV. She blinked her little eyes and said,
"Cicada, you're learning badly. Don't watch those things on TV. Yi Tianban scolded with a face.
"Yes, Master, there is no TV now, and you can't see it if you want to." The cicada stuck out her tongue and hung it on Yi Tian's arm. "Well, Ear's mother is here, and the master takes her to see his mother."
Yi Tian glanced at Qin Luo and explained. "Yes, my mother, I only saw my mother last time and forgot this stubble." Ear jumped up like a dream.
"Sister Ear's mother, my disciples also want to go with me, and Sister Luoshan."
Didn't you also say that you want to see Sister Ear's mother when you have a chance?
"Go with me." When she heard the speech, she was immediately excited.
Okay, Sister Luoshan will go too.
"Let's go together." Before Yi Tian makes a decision, Ear immediately yells.
I don't know what Qin Luoshan thought.
She actually stood up and said, "Since Ear's mother is here, as a younger generation, I can't lose a gift. I'll go with Ear to see her."
Yi Tian nodded and agreed.
In the cave, only Qing Qing and small chestnuts were left.
Yi Tian took 3 women out of the cave and put it away again. That's the magic weapon cave. Yi Tian casually pointed to Yan Yunyang's magic weapon cave and said, "Nyang." Ear shouted and flew away. Ear, in the magic weapon cave, Yan Yunyang heard Ear's cry and flew out in a flash. She was being attacked by Ear. "Ear, if you want to look like a lady, what's the matter now?"
Wei Nyang thought something had happened to you. It sounded like killing a pig, pulled Ear out of her arms, and Yan Yunyang scolded seriously.
Immediately, she suddenly sensed the breath on Ear, and suddenly asked, "Ear, you condensed the golden elixir and broke through the golden elixir?"
At this time, Shuileigui, Yao Wang, Yu Yan and others also heard the sound and looked at Ear in amazement. Yan Yunyang said something about Ear a few days ago. They all know that Ear has broken through to the peak of the Dragon Dream, but it's only a few days since Ear broke through again and directly condensed the golden elixir.
This speed is terrible. Ear.
At this time, many temple disciples heard the voice here and gathered together. One of them, a female monk similar to Ear's age, ran over and affectionately called,
"Ah, Xiao Yun. Long time no see." Ear saw the nun holding her.
Xiao Yun was the only disciple she had made friends with in the temple. She had been with her since childhood. "Ear, you have broken through the golden elixir realm, but I still watch the sea.
You have left me too much. Your cultivation speed is too fast, and there should be no faster than you." Xiao Yun and Ear happily talked for a few words, and then sighed. She had the same level of cultivation as Ear.
This time, after more than a year's separation, there has been a world difference between them. This speed is beyond her reach.
Nothing is faster than me?
Ear touched Xiao Yun's head and said with a smile, "You are in the square-inch spiritual domain and are out of touch with all the domains of the heavens."
I can't say it's the fastest. There are others faster than me. You see, this is my sister Luotian.
Although she is older than me, she has been practicing for only 2 years, and she has already condensed the golden elixir. And this sister, called Shan, although she is still a little girl, she is also in the golden elixir realm.
Ear pointed to Qin Luo and Ear one by one and introduced them.
The temple disciples around gathered more and more, and many looked enviously at them.
Everyone is extremely shocked. After 2 years of cultivation, they arrive at the golden elixir realm. What about those who have been practicing for more than 10 years and still stay in the sea viewing realm? Did you practice on dogs? The youngest sister is in the golden elixir realm. I must say she's 2 years older. Now she's still on the 5th floor of the cave realm. Why is the gap so big?
Almost all the temple disciples were hit.
Even those high-level Yuanying and Washinjing friars are no exception.
They naturally compare their own years and think of their age when they condensed the golden elixir.
Well, all brothers, go to practice.
It's impossible for others to improve their level.
You should study like Ear and work hard like her.
At this time, Yin Yunyang waved and said to the temple disciples around, "Mom, I'm not as hard-working as you said.
This cicada is lazier than Ear.
Brother Yi Tian gave us the pill as a sugar ball, and then ate it, slept, ate it and dreamed.
I don't know what's going on and condensed the golden pill," Ear said happily. Nonsense.
Well, you're scattered. Yin Yunyang suddenly found that this was a failed inspirational education.
The originally good atmosphere was destroyed by Ear's words.
However, she knew very well in her heart that Ear could not deceive herself in this.
Maybe it was true. She would never let Ear go on.
Otherwise, it will affect the mood of those disciples in the temple.
If eating and sleeping and eating are useful, who will bury his head in hard practice?
The disciples of the temple were driven away by Yin Yunyang, but everyone was thinking about Ear's words.
The temple disciples know something about Ear's character.
This girl is definitely not the master of painstaking cultivation, and even if it is painstaking cultivation, it is absolutely impossible to improve her cultivation so quickly. What's more, the little girl who seems to be only a teenager also goes to the golden elixir realm to practice.
What else can she do if she practices hard?
Therefore, penance is definitely not the reason why they improved their accomplishments so quickly.
The most fundamental reason is because of Dante. Dandy's reincarnation and recultivation have not reached Yuanying.
It is said that the time of Dandy's cultivation is also very short, even much shorter than that of Ear. Dante or pills, or magic weapon cave, in short, it is because of contemporary reasons.
When they left, Yin Yunyang once again let Yi Tian and others into the magic weapon cave.
Several Taoist friends, this is my good friend, Qin Luotian, and this is my disciple, Cicada. After taking his seat, Yi Tian introduced it to several great friars present. Although the accomplishments of Qin Luo and Shan Shan were relatively low, several great friars greeted them very politely because they were related to Yi Tian. And on this occasion, Yin Yunyang made an exception and gave up her seat.
Yin Daoyu didn't talk too much about Ear last time in Lingshu Blessed Land because of the urgency of time.
Now that Yin Daoyu has come to Earthstar and the temple has stabilized, Yi returns Ear to Daoyu.
As for Mu Rongyan and others, Yi Tian just said this. Ear suddenly understood what was going on.
She seemed to be trampled on her tail and screamed, "Brother Yi Tian, don't drive me away.
I won't go. I won't go anywhere. I'll follow you. I'll depend on you."
As for Murangian's disciples, they are all in the Maitreya palace at present. When Yin Daoyu wants them to return to the temple, Yi will return them at any time. It is said that these disciples are very good. Although it is not a long time, their cultivation level has been improved, and more than 20 people have condensed the golden elixir.
Yi Tian ignored Ear and continued.
Dandy, thank you very much for providing so many cultivation resources. Lin Zhua has described in detail the matter of Mu Rongyan and others condensing the golden elixir. In such a short time, not only more than 20 of them condense the golden elixir, but also 4 of them enter the middle stage of the golden elixir. Even the core disciples of the temple are inferior to such cultivation speed. Yen Yunyang said with emotion. Yi Tian said, when they came to the Earth Star, Morong Yen and others made a lot of efforts against the coming friars in Fengsuan spirit domain.
Naturally, ye can't treat them badly.
When Yi Tiangang said this, Ir interrupted again and continued the topic. Brother Yi Tian, I said I wouldn't leave you and don't drive me away.
Do you agree or not? Yi Tian knew that this problem could not be avoided. He didn't speak, but looked at Yen Yunyang. The people who took away the temple must be returned by this time. It's not their attitude, but whether to take it or not is the matter of the temple. Even if you don't answer, your own program is finished. At this time, Yen Yunyang said with a little meditation, Yi Daoyu, since Ir doesn't want to go, it's good to stay with you for training, just to bother you. Yi Tian nodded. Since Yen Daoyu trusted Yi, Yi let her be with Luo God and Cicada. They also have a company with each other. When Ir wants to go back, it's up to her temperament. Hearing Yi Tian's words, Ir was immediately happy, and her spirit was much better than before. Yen Yunyang looked at Yi Tian and Ir. She didn't say more about Ir, but looked at Shueleagui, Yu Yan and others and said, Neurongian disciples were originally peripheral disciples of the temple. What opinions do several elders have on their fate? But it's up to the temple lord, the old woman said immediately. That's my opinion, said Shueleagui. He didn't have any impression of Neurongian. Strictly speaking, the peripheral disciples of the temple couldn't enter their sight at all. They were of ordinary quality and understanding. Morong Yen and others entered the valley on behalf of the temple. They are the only survivors who can come out safely and carry a large number of spiritual materials. At that time, they brought a lot of benefits to the temple and raised the prestige of the temple in the square-inch spiritual domain. If not, I'm afraid he doesn't even know who Morong Yen is. Therefore, from this matter, the fate of those people really had little to do with him. More importantly, he heard Yen Yunyang's implication. Yu Yen saw that Shueleagui and the Medicine King didn't express their opinions, so she followed Dalio and let the Hall Lord Gongang be arbitrary. After asking the elders for their opinions, Yen Ruyu said to Yi Tian, at the beginning, Morong Yan's disciples came to Earth Star with Ir. Since Ir still stayed in the Maitreya Palace, Morong Yan and other disciples also stayed there temporarily. On the one hand, they all know Ir's temper and temperament, and they can be tolerant due to Ir's identity. On the other hand, they are used to it in the Maitreya Palace and have many familiar Taoist friends. If they suddenly return to the temple, I'm afraid if you are not used to it, you will delay your practice. Of course, if Yi Daoyu has something to send, just call it, as long as you don't give Yi Daoyu any trouble. Yi Tian nodded slightly and said, they also made a lot of efforts and made a lot of contributions to the Earth Star in the battle to protect the Maitreya Palace. Yi had promised to ensure that all of them could enter the Jade Pu realm. Since Yen Daoyu is convenient, Yi will stay, otherwise Yi will really break his promise. Yi Tian's words surprised many great monks in the temple, and the shock in his heart can be imagined. If anyone changed and said to let all the peripheral disciples of these temples enter the Jade Pu realm, they would think that this person is a madman, not a fool. However, these words came from Yi Tian's mouth, so they couldn't help believing them. Although, I also think this thing is too outrageous. Yi Tian none practiced in Yuanying territory in a short time. All these people, including Ir, have condensed the golden elixir. Over time, no one dares to say what kind of state Ir will reach. What's more, Yi Tian just promised to let those peripheral disciples enter Yupu territory, but didn't promise how long. As long as those disciples don't fall, maybe they can really become great friars in Yupu territory like themselves. Since Yi Daoyu has devoted so much effort to these disciples, I don't have any opinion if you think they can be brought up, that is, they can be brought into the door of the Maitreya Palace. The left and right temples are connected with the Maitreya Palace and look like a family. Yen Yunyang said after a little meditation. Yemo doesn't mean to win love, but Yemo pays more attention to feelings. They have helped the Earth Star, so Yemo will help them achieve the road. As for whether to join the Maitreya Palace, it's secondary, Yetian said with a smile. Yen Yunyang nodded slightly and didn't say anything more about it, but she had made a decision in her heart. Even if these disciples return to the temple, she will never push them to the realm of Jade and Pu. Since these disciples have worked in the temple before,
they will have a feeling of incense.
One day, those people will all become great friars in Yupu territory.
Naturally, they will remember this friendship. Even becoming disciples of the Maitreya palace is a good thing for the temple, far better than returning to the temple and perishing with plants and trees. As the lord of the temple, she thought for the first time that in addition to making friends with Tian, she should also maintain a good relationship with those external disciples, and let them join the Maitreya as much as possible. Tian didn't know if he could finish this matter, so he said again, there are many disciples in the temple. In this vast desert, it is inconvenient for cultivation. Moreover, low-level disciples are of no use in fighting against netherworld cultivation.
If they are forcibly used, they will only increase casualties. Yi chose a place for the temple. There was once a sect called Qingming sect, but now it is a punishment palace of the Maitreya palace. Only a few disciples of this sect are there on duty. If Yin Daoyu doesn't dislike it, he can place temple disciples there. When the disciples of the field branch of the palace have time, they can arrange a time field with 5 times the flow rate there, which is more conducive to the cultivation of temple disciples. Yi Daoyu is so considerate in his busy schedule. It really bothers Yi Daoyu. Then I'll laugh at it, so that these disciples can have more sense of belonging to the Earth Star, and we can fight against Mingxiu at ease. Hearing Yi Tian's words, Yen Yunyang immediately accepted it. Yi Tian took out a jade slip and handed it to Yen Yunyang. It depicts the location there and the control method of the field. Yi has informed the on-duty disciples there to be ready for handover at any time. If Yen Daoyu is interested, you can go and have a look now. Yen Yunyang took over the jade slips and said, Yi Daoyu is busy, so you don't have to go there in person. When this place is cleaned up, Yu Changlao will go and settle down the disciples. Good. Yi Tian said that casually, he had an extra Shumi ring on his hand and said to Yen Ruyu, there are 20 million fairy jade and 600 pairs of dragon armor. The Earth Star has been thin for a long time, and there are no fairy jade veins. These fairy jades are given to the temple for disciples' cultivation. However, these dragon armor are also great treasures, which can dissolve 60% of the opponent's attacks. How does this make? After listening to Yi Tian's introduction, Yen Yunyang stared at Su Mijia in Yi Tian's hand and said, in fact, the temple to the Earth Star is also a refuge. It's just easy to help Yi Daoyu fight against the Ming cultivation. How can the temple accept Yi Daoyu's heavy gifts? If such a large amount of fairy jade doesn't say, it's the 600 pairs of divine dragon armor. Any one of them appears in the square-inch spiritual domain, it may cause a bloody storm. How can such a valuable gift be accepted? But Yi Tian said with an indifferent smile, to tell you the truth, the most important thing missing in the Maitreya palace is fairy jade. This little fairy jade is nothing to the Maitreya palace. As for the dragon armor, the heavenly division of the Maitreya palace can refine it. These are all refined by them. Ye's goal is that the Maitreya sect will be equipped with dragon armor in the future. Therefore, for the safety of the temple disciples, Yen Daoyu will take it. Thank you, Taoist Yi. Would you like to ask how many disciples there are in the Maitreya palace? Yen Ruyu thanked and excitedly took Zumaji and asked. Yi Tian said with a smile, since we are fighting against Ming Xiu together, you will naturally make a solid foundation for Yen Daoyu. We all know. There are nearly 140,000 disciples in the Maitreya palace. What? 140,000? Yen Ruyu was surprised. Since she came to the Earth Star, the disciples of the Maitreya palace she saw were those who participated in the battle against the Netherworld. As for the rest, most of them lived in the magic weapon cave, and many others were in Mabe. She didn't know the specific strength of the disciples of the Maitreya palace. Even Linzwood didn't know that. The number of 140,000 is definitely more than any sect in the square-inch spiritual domain, even more than the sum of the 8 sects in the inch spiritual domain. And Yi Tian thought that all the disciples of the Maitreya palace should be equipped with black dragon armor? It's impossible to do this in the temple or at any religious gate. Seeing Yen Yunyang's expression, Yi Tian smiled, waved his hand and said, Taoist Yen, don't be surprised. Although there are many disciples in the Maitreya palace, most of them have low accomplishments, including only one in Yupu territory, only more than 30 monks in Huashan territory, and only 800 monks in Yuanying territory, not to mention the following golden elixirs.
However, Yi plans to achieve 20 Grand Monks in Yupu territory and 500 monks in Huashan territory within 3 years, which will cost Yuan. There are 10,000 monks in the infant territory, and all the other disciples have broken through to the golden elixir territory.
Yi Tian casually said a number, and Yen Yunyang listened blankly.
Shui Leigui, the medicine king, and the old woman, Yu Yan, also opened his mouth slightly and listened foolishly.
Cow force doesn't blow like this. It's just a joke. When you open your mouth and close your mouth, there are 20 big friars in Yupu territory, 500 friars in Huashan territory and 10,000 friars in Yuanying territory. However, Yi Tian said so. Is it bragging, or can you really do it? Although they do not believe that a sect can achieve such a degree, they still speculate about the credibility of this goal. If those disciples are like Ear, their cultivation speed is definitely possible in the future. At this time, Yi Tian smiled again. Yi was excited for a moment and said his future plan. I won't mention anything that has nothing to do with the fight against the nether cultivation now. In addition to the disciples, there are more than 400,000 monster beasts of all levels in the Maitreya Palace, including 14 monster beasts of level 6 and more than 40,000 monster beasts of level 5. The rest are low-level monster beasts. In addition, there are more than 30,000 martial soul puppets in the half-step divine realm. Each martial soul puppet is equipped with a half-immortal soldier flying sword. This is the specific strength of the Maitreya Palace. After Yi Tian finished, Yen Yunyang came back and said, no wonder the Maitreya Palace can fight the whole underworld with the power of only one palace. And Yi Daoyu has a powerful power to kill the Heavenly Palace. At this point, the Maitreya Palace can be invincible in all regions of the sky. Yi Tian smiled, shook his head and said, Yi has no desire for hegemony and pursues the eternal road. The reason why the Maitreya Palace has developed so rapidly is to protect the peace of the heavens in all regions in only 2 years. According to the prediction of Master Sui Huang of Yi, there may be chaos in the heavens in all regions in a few decades, and the whole spiritual region will face an extremely serious catastrophe. Yi can't help it if you don't plan ahead, prepare early. Catastrophe? What kind of catastrophe? Yen Yunyang asked with a tight look after hearing Yi Tian say so. Yi Tian shook his head slightly. Shifu said that this is a secret of heaven and should not be disclosed for the time being. But he left a sealed message to Yi. It will take 2 years before Yi enters the Heaven Palace. By that time, you should know what kind of catastrophe it is. However, it can be speculated that the catastrophe that Yi is qualified to know only when he reaches the Heaven Palace will definitely not come from the spirit domain. It should be a higher interface. Yen Yunyang and others felt very speechless again. None of the 4 great friars in Yupu territory dare say when they can break through the Heavenly Palace, and even whether they can break through the Heavenly Palace in this life is unknown. However, this Dan Di, who was only in Yuanying territory, said that he would break through Tiangong territory in 2 days? Although they all know that the 2 years mentioned by Yi Tian is only an approximate number, it does not necessarily mean the 2 years. Maybe 4, 5, 6 or 7 years are all within the scope of this approximate number. But even if you count 10 years, it is definitely an unnatural number. It is impossible for any amazing monk in Yuanying territory. Should I or shouldn't I? Yen Yunyang glanced at the other 3 monks in the temple, then bypassed the topic and said to Yi Tian, it seems that Yi Daoyu should be robbed. Yi Tian nodded slightly. The master said the same thing. At that time, Yi was in a low state and didn't believe it. Even now, Yi also feels that this thing is a bit absurd. Whether there will be a great disaster at that time depends on whether Yi's master is right. After he fired a shot, he put all the blame on the Flint Emperor. The purpose of his trip has been completed, and Yi Tian will not stay too much. He stood up and said, Shui Daoyu and Demon King Daoyu can take the pill, and Yi will refine it again. Yen Daoyu, fellow Taoists, Yi is leaving. With that, he touched his little head and took the lead out of the cave. Several beauties followed. Yen Yunyang sent her to the door of the cave in a trance until Yi Tian had sent Ir and others back to their cave and left with the divine carving. After greeting the people back to the cave, Yen Yunyang waved her hand and opened the door of the cave. Then she asked, what do you think of the words of Taoist friends of the Dan Emperor? Hearing Yen Yunyang's question, Shui Leigui began to meditate, but none of them spoke. Yen Yunyang realized that she didn't point out the problem, which really made it difficult for people to answer, so she continued, "What do the elders think is the possibility of breaking through to the heavenly palace in 2 years? Or from another angle, do you believe it?"
Shui Leagui said thoughtfully, "In the previous life, the Dan Emperor was famous for a while, but he only reached the Jade Pu realm. However, in this reincarnation, he worshipped the Sui Emperor as his teacher. As for what magic power the Sui Emperor passed down, we don't know whether there is a quick way, and we don't know. His words should be between the two." Yen Yunyang glanced at Shui Leagui and whispered in her heart. After talking for a long time, she didn't even have her own point of view.
It's equivalent to all nonsense. He looked at the old woman Medicine King. "What do you think?"
The Medicine King thought for a moment and said, "I think it's possible and impossible to open it in 90% can't break through, and only 10% break through to the heavenly palace. If we really break through to the heavenly palace within 10 years, it will definitely subvert all kinds of cognition of our cultivation. The Demon King is blocked at both ends, but generally speaking, he doesn't believe it."
Yen Yunyang looked at Yu Yen again. "Elder Yu, what do you think?"
Yu Yen said, "Now, it took the Dan Emperor 3 years to break through to Yuanying territory, that is to say, it took him 3 years to reach the 4 realms of Dongfu, Guanhai, Longmen and Jindan.
There are also 4 realms from Yuanying to Huashan, Yupu and Tiangong.
We all know that the more we go to the back, the more difficult it is to break through.
Maybe a small realm will catch the master for decades later.
Anyway, I don't believe that Dante can break through the heavenly palace in a few years. He is definitely the most likely person to break through the heavenly palace, but it will take at least 100 years, which is very rebellious. The 100-year-old heavenly palace is definitely the first person in the world."
"Well, I'm just curious about what you think about it."
"Elder Yu, go to the foothold prepared by the Dan Emperor for us first, and then arrange for the disciples to move. Elder Shui, you and the King of Medicine go to heal, and I'll take charge of it for the time being." Yen Yunyang said and handed Yu Yen the jade slips in her hand. After the 3 left, Yen Yunyang paced in the cave for a while, and then left the cave in a hurry. When she came to the cave, she took out a messenger and whispered a few words.
Soon, the door of a magic weapon cave not far away opened.
Yen Zhongkai took a few steps from inside, waved to her, and then turned and returned to the magic weapon cave.
"Brother, it seems that you are in a good situation now?" Yen Yunyang asked happily when she saw Yen Zhongkai's red face. "Yunyang, sit down quickly. The Dante is the Dante. The Dante's attainments are really extraordinary.
The smell of destruction on my brother was really dispelled by the pill. It shouldn't be long before I can recover my accomplishments, as the Dante said." Yen Zhongkai gestured, opened the prohibition of the magic weapon cave gate and said with a smile. Yen Yunyang sat on the chair and looked at her brother, who hadn't smiled so brightly for a long time. She was also happy for him. After she was injured and came back, there was no progress in all kinds of clinics, and there was still some deterioration. At that time, Yen Zhongkai thought that his road of cultivation would come to an end.
Now, finally, Liuan Huaming is suddenly enlightened.
The Dan Emperor's attainments in Dan Dao are really unparalleled in the world.
"Brother, do you think it is possible for him to break through to the heavenly palace within 10 years? Yen Yunyang asked with a smile. "He, how could it be?"
Yen Zhongkai said with a smile, "Yunyang, you are also a great monk who has reached the Jade Pu realm.
How can you ask such a ridiculous question?" Yen Yunyang nodded and said with a smile, "Does that brother think it's possible that has entered the golden elixir realm?" Yen Zhongkai said without thinking, "How can it be?
It's the biggest limit for him to reach the peak of Longmen. Last time you said that she had just entered the peak of Longmen, it's only a few days, and it's impossible to condense the golden elixir.
3 years?
It takes at least 3 or 5 years. Breaking through the big realm is not so easy, not like breaking through the small realm." What he said was all about the common sense of practitioners.
There was nothing wrong. He was afraid of hitting Yen Yunyang.
There was another word he didn't say, that is, some friars may be stuck in the Longmen area all their life. And 3 or 5 years is also the number he said after he compressed it.
Yen Yunyang nodded silently and said, "But really broke through."
"What did you break through?"
To the golden elixir? Who did you listen to?
Yan Zhongkai still asked with a smile.
Elder brother, I saw it with my own eyes. The Dan Emperor came with Eir. Eir has broken through the golden elixir realm. It's absolutely true. Yan Yunyang hurriedly confirmed.
When Yan Zhongkai heard the speech, he just picked up the teacup that hadn't been delivered to his lips and slowly put it down. He was stunned and said, "It's not impossible to make a breakthrough.
Dante's cultivation has not been long. Didn't he also break through Yuanying?
If Dante gave refining pills to the magic weapon cave in the field for 5 times, maybe it's really possible to break through the golden elixir realm."
Haha, brother, have you noticed that you just said categorically that it was impossible, and you admitted that it was possible? Then I'll ask you again, is it possible for the Dan Emperor to break through to the heavenly palace in 10 or 8 years?
Yan Yunyang said seriously.
Yunyang, how strange are you? Why do you ask this question? Is it important that the Dan Emperor can break through the heavenly palace in 10 or 8 years? There is no doubt that he will break through sooner or later. As for the early 2 years and the late 2 years, what does it matter?
Yan Zhongkai stared at Yan Yunyang for several times, and then asked in confusion.
Alas, brother, it's really important. It's not a matter of those years.
The Dante said it himself and said that he could break through the heavenly palace in 2 years.
Yan Yunyang stood up and explained, I just want to know whether the Dante is talking casually or is it really possible? Yan Zhongkai suddenly realized it, then pointed to Yan Yunyang and laughed. Yunyang, why are you so serious? Dante just said that. It's not necessarily true. It's not necessarily true. He said that after 2 years, it's not necessarily true. That's what he said. It's not necessarily a few years. Maybe it's 10 years, 20 years, 50 years, and 100 years. Do you say you can't live with this word? Is it interesting? Yan Yunyang sighed, elder brother, I don't know whether I didn't understand or you didn't understand. Well, I stroked it again.
His master, Emperor Sui, said that in a few decades, the heavens and all regions may face a great disaster, and he didn't know what the disaster was.
He just said that Emperor Sui sealed a message for him.
He said that he would unlock the seal after he entered the heavenly palace in 2 years.
And he said, the Flint Emperor said, he is the one who should be robbed. Brother, look, the meaning of 2 years is definitely not what you mean by 50 or 100 years. At most, it is 10 or 8 years. If this sentence can be realized, it will directly determine whether other things are true. What I care about most is not whether he can break through the heavenly palace in 2 years, but whether the universe will really change in a few decades. A great disaster has happened. If that is the case, where will our temple go and how will we survive that great disaster? Ah, so it is. Now Yan Zhongkai finally understood. The reason why he didn't understand before was that Yan Yunyang didn't understand. He came up and asked others if the Dan Emperor could break through the Heaven Palace within 10 years. It's really a little puzzling. Yan Zhongkai did not continue to quarrel with Yan Yunyang on this issue. He sat in his chair and pondered for a long time before saying, do you think it is necessary for the Dan Emperor to deceive us? If so, where are his interests? Do you think he will map the resources and fairy jade of our temple?
Yan Yunyang shook her head decisively. No, after you left, Dante specially took out 20 million fairy jade and 600 dragon armor, and assigned a ready-made foothold to the temple, which is the location of a sect gate of the original Earth Star. Our temple doesn't have 20 million fairy jade. Moreover, the dragon armor can block the attack power of the process, and everything is invaluable. Dante won't plan any of our resources. Is there such a thing? Yan Zhongkai came out of the cave earlier. After returning to the cave, he entered the 5 times field cave sent by Yi Tianqin. After opening the prohibition, he took pills to heal his wounds. Naturally, he didn't know these things. Yes, Dan D also said that when the heavenly work division of the Maitreya Palace accommodates time, it will give each great monk in the temple a cave with a field 5 times the time, and promise that in the future, a field with a flow rate 5 times the time will be arranged at the foothold of the disciples. All these, the Maitreya Palace can be regarded as a blood capital. Yan Yunyang said slowly.
Yan Zhongkai nodded. In this way, it can be ruled out that the Dante is the cultivation resource for plotting the temple. Is it possible that he has a crush on Ear, so he wants to raise his value and get your consent to form a Taoist companion with Ear? Yan Yunyang said angrily, forget it. Ear?
His charming family, Dante, almost forgot me as a mother. Even if I don't agree and don't need others to talk to Dante, Ear has to work hard with me.
The calculation is upside down. Ear is also 1,000 and 10,000 willing. Alas, I can't help my mother. Does Dante want to use the power of our temple to fight against Mingxiu? Or is he worried that our temple will be bad for him? So he bluff? Yan Zhongkai asked, you have more contact with Dante, and you know something about it. What do you think? Yan Yunyang shook her head, this is impossible. Brother, do you know how many monsters there are in the Maitreya palace? How many disciples? How many martial spirit puppets? You said.
Yan Zhongkai said with wide eyes. There are nearly 140,000 disciples in Miluo Palace, there are more than 400,000 demons, more than 40,000 fifth-order demons, and 30,000 martial spirit puppets who can half-turn the divine realm. In addition, with the divine power of Dan Di, who can kill the great power of the heavenly palace realm, will he still value the strength of our temple? In my opinion, Dante's idea is that it's always good to have more help, but it's not necessary. With such strength as the Maitreya palace, how can he worry about the disadvantage of the temple to him? Does he have any reason to use the temple? Yan Yunyang said like a firecracker. As she spoke, Yan Yunyang suddenly thought of something and exclaimed, by the way, brother, there's another thing. I didn't think about it at that time, but now it seems that it's a very important clue.
You said. Yan Zhongkai stared again.
The first group of peripheral disciples who came to Earthstar with Emperor Dan entered the country quickly in the Maitreya palace.
Yi Tian specially mentioned the treatment of those disciples.
I told Emperor Dan that those disciples still followed him. If they wanted to join the Maitreya palace, there would be no problem. Yan Yunyang recalled her dialogue with Yi Tian at that time and said it carefully.
What's the attitude of Dante? Yan Zhongkai asked.
Yan Yunyang frowned slightly and said, at that time, the attitude of the Dan Emperor was very vague, some non-committal.
Yan Zhongkai nodded and pondered. After a moment, he looked at Yan Yunyang. What do you mean? The Dan Emperor may have the idea of letting the temple join the Maitreya palace.
Yan Yunyang shook her head, I don't know, so I came to consult my brother. Yan Zhongkai said, although I didn't know Dante before, I've heard of some things about Dante.
He has a good reputation and is loved by the bottom friars. Through all kinds of things, my brother can guarantee that Dante is always releasing goodwill to the temple. Maybe he just talks about the possible catastrophe in the future. Miao Hao can prepare us for it, and doesn't mean anything else. However, if there is really a great disaster in decades, as Emperor Dan said, should our temple also make preparations earlier? Yan Yunyang asked.
Yan Zhongkai stroked his short beard and said, now we can see that the achievements of Dante will be unlimited in the future. Maybe the great power of the heavenly palace is not his end. Whether there is a great disaster or not, or whether he is the person who should be robbed, we must keep up with Dante.
Once there is an irresistible disaster in the temple, Dante is our biggest backer.
I also thought about this, but I also thought of another level. If there is a great disaster in the future, if there is spare power, he will certainly help the temple with Dante's personality and friendship with the temple.
But if the situation is too severe, which one will Dante protect first between the Maitreya palace and the temple?
Yan Yunyang said with worry in her eyes.
What's more?
It must be the Maitreya palace. It's the sect he founded himself. There are all his disciples under the sect. Yan Zhongkai said without hesitation.
Brother, I'll ask you again, what is the purpose of the ancestors to establish the temple? Yan Yunyang continued.
Yan Zhongkai looked at Yan Yunyang and asked, nature is to look for the remains of the first ancestor and awaken the blood of the Yin family, so he used the temple power in his hand to collect all kinds of information everywhere to achieve this goal.
Have you forgotten? Oh, brother, as a descendant of the Yin family, how can I forget?
You and Longer are the only male members of the Yin family.
Longer has been missing for many years and has not been heard from.
If other branches of the Yin family get the remains of the first ancestor in the future, they may fight against us and devour the only blood factors. Although we have not devoured others, the idea of branch blood, but the heart of preventing people can't be absent.
Yan Yunyang said. Yan Zhongkai frowned and asked, "What are you doing about Dante? Is there a relationship between the two?"
I mean, brother, it's too slim that our temple pursues not inheritance, but only relying on the power of the temple to find the remains of the first ancestor. Just once, you mistakenly entered the field and were poisoned by looting embers. If it wasn't for the shot of the Dante, I'm afraid you'd fall down. Why don't we show our sincerity to the Dante, be honest and join the atonement Luo Gong, perhaps with the ability of Dan Emperor, can help us achieve this goal.
Yan Yunyang said in a deep voice. It seems that Yan Yunyang's words moved Yan Zhongkai. Instead of immediately refuting, he began to meditate. A moment later, Yan Zhongkai shook his head slowly and said, "This matter should be delayed rather than urgent." Although our brothers and sisters of the Yin family have the goal of the Yin family, the temple has been established for many years, and the ancestors of the temple disciples have followed them. We must be responsible for them. After several spiritual domains, these disciples are our loyal followers. Now it's not either this or that. When we have to make a choice, Brother Wei's idea is to have a look first and have more respect for the Dan Emperor, some understanding to ensure that the temple disciples can be properly placed. Yen Ruyu said, "It's better for my brother to think carefully." Let's do it.
When Yan Zhongkai and his sister were spying in the magic weapon cave, Yi Tian had come to the camp of Shueiyue's sect.
In a magic weapon cave, Yi Tian, Morong Jun and Tan Suching are talking happily.
At the same time, Morong Chuchu of Shueiyue's sect branch is here, talking and laughing with each other. On the table in the middle is a magic weapon cave 5 times the flow rate of time, and a Shumi ring. At this time, Yi Tian said, this magic weapon cave with 5 times the flow rate of time was sent to Shueiyue's sect. In terms of the temple, Yi sent a magic weapon cave and borrowed another one.
Yi didn't want to take it back. So is Taoist Morong. You don't have to pay back another one.
As he spoke, Yi Tian gestured again, took out a magic weapon cave from Zumaji and put it on the table. This may seem like a blessing in disguise to Taoist Morong. However, both the temple and Shueiyue's sect came to Earthstar to support the Terrans and fight against the Pluto. Yi will naturally spare no effort to give some resource support, but the temple has 20,000 disciples, while Shueiyue's sect has only 10,000.
In fact, the resource ratio between the two is not balanced. If it is distributed according to the proportion of the number of people, it will be natural the number of Shueiyue's sect here is smaller. But a magic weapon cave is really not enough, and it is inconvenient to allocate it. There is one for free, but borrowing a few is not a big problem.
In this way, neither the temple nor your Shueiyue's sect will feel uncomfortable. Hearing Yi Tian finish, Morong Jun smiled, Taoist friend of Dan Di, I didn't expect you to think so much about such a small matter. In terms of the temple, I don't care what he thinks. Earth Star is the ancestor star of our disciples of Shueiyue's sect. We will not turn back when the ancestor star is in trouble, and Yi Daoyu also plays a role as a guide. Even if the Miluo Palace doesn't provide any support to Shueiyue's sect, we won't have any criticism. Let alone, Yi Daoyu has sent 10 million fairy jade and a magic weapon cave, which is the greatest support for Shueiyue's sect. Moreover, my aunt is also a disciple of Dan Di Daoyu and is not an outsider. Morong Jun's aunt naturally refers to Morong Chanshan. As early as Yi Tian was refining pills in the magic weapon cave of the Maitreya Palace, Morong Chanshan had come here. 2 descendants of Shueiyue's sect narrate their genealogy here. Although Morong Jun is older than Morong Chanshan is twice as long as Morong Jun in terms of seniority. The ancestors of the 2 people were close brothers, and then they separated when crossing the void. One came to the spirit realm of Rose, and the other came to the spirit realm of Fengsuan, each with branches and leaves. As a result, the relationship between Shueiyue's sect and Maitreya Palace was closer, so Morong Chanshan set up her camp close to Shueiyue's sect. Because the 2 branches are of the same origin, not only the Morong family has the same clan in the 2 October sects, but also many disciples of other surnames have found the same clan, that is, Tan Suching sitting in front of him has also found the descendants of the same ancestor in the Shueiyue branch. This inextricable connection makes the camp of Shuiwei branch of the Maitreya Palace and the camp of Shuiwei sect of Fengsuan Lingyu the same camp, and the disciples on both sides move frequently.
At this time, after hearing Murong Jun's words, Yi Tian waved his hand. Since you are not an outsider, don't refuse.
Besides, Murong Chuchu, the sister of Old 19, is now in charge of the field branch.
The field has great attainments.
Murong Chuchu led the field branch to arrange the cave 5 times the time. If the mission of the Maitreya Palace is completed in the future and the time is not so tight, Murong Taoist friends can rely on their personal skills relationship. Please Murong Chuchu to arrange another time field for your magic weapon cave, and Yi acquiesced. In this case, even if the temple knows, it will not be unbalanced.
Murong Jun said with a smile, Aunt Chuchu was mentioned by my aunt. Murong's descendants finally came up with an amazing figure.
According to my aunt, Aunt Chuchu's achievement has a lot to do with the guidance and support of the Taoist Friends of Dandi. The Taoist Friends of Dandi handed over the extremely valuable ancient books to Aunt Chuchu without reservation, so her field attainments were one step closer. Yi Tiandao, Old 19 or Murong Chuchu, since they have joined the Maitreya Palace, they are all disciples of the Maitreya Palace. They have contributed to the Maitreya Palace, and what Yi has done is naturally taken for granted. Moreover, in terms of the temple, Yi has set a foothold for them, and Murong Taoist friends can't fall down. You want to return to the ancestral star and return to the Shuiwei cave, that Shuiwei that settled down at the former site of the sect. There was originally the Water Moon sect with Earth Star. The disciples of the sect created this Water Moon sect because they were inherited by your ancestors.
In other words, you are also 3 in 1.
Next time, you will bring the disciples of the Earth Star Mercury Moon sect to let you have a big reunion. Moreover, this time, Yi also brought 400 pairs of dragon armor to Murong Taoist friends. Old 19 knows what dragon armor is best. Let her introduce it to Murong Taoist friends, which can always ensure the safety of the disciples of Shuiwei sect. When Yi Tian finished, he motioned, and another Shumi ring appeared on the table. Murong Qianqian said to Murong Jun, the dragon armor is one of the secrets of the palace. It involves the absolute secrets of the Maitreya Palace. Before Shifu's permission, we didn't disclose our relationship. Since Shifu speaks now, I'll introduce it. The dragon armor is refined by the heavenly division of the Maitreya Palace. Wearing it on the body can offset 60% of the opponent's attack power, that is, right the hand can have up to 40% of the power's damage. As he spoke, Murong Qianqian stood up, his mana fluctuated, and a set of dark armor emerged from him. There is no hierarchy of this kind of dragon armor. They are all made of the same material and the same process. The one I wear is exactly the same as that in Shumi ring. Even among the disciples of our palace, there are a few equipped with this kind of dragon armor. Many disciples are not equipped with armor. Among the disciples equipped with armor, some are equipped with black dragon armor and Tenglong armor with less defense power.
Dan Di Taoist friend, this gift is too heavy.
Murong Jun thanked Dan Di on behalf of all the disciples of Shuiwei sect. After saying that, Murong Jun got up and arched his hands to Yi Tian.
You're welcome, Taoist Murong.
Next, Yi is going to start fighting against the Fog Sea in Ma Bay. First, clear the Ming Xiu there and let the displaced people move back as soon as possible. You can also withdraw troops from there as soon as possible and deal with the Ming Xiu on the western line. Old 19, take a step as a teacher, and then you take Taoist Murong to Ma Bei.
Yi Tian stood up and said, Yes, master. Murong Qianqian immediately stood up and answered, Murong Daoyu, Tan Daoyu, see you in Ma Bei. Yi Tian said and turned out of the cave. Call the Golden Eye Eagle and go straight to the Fog Sea in Ma Bei. Half an hour later, Shuiyuzong branch and Shuiyuzong jointly rushed to the theater defense line in the south of Fog. 3 or 4 miles away from Huafan Stone Isolation Belt, Yi Tian called the relevant personnel together and began to dispatch troops. Among all the monks involved in the battle this time, only the people of Shuiwei sect are not equipped with Xianyin stone clothes. If they are too close to Dahua Stone Defense Belt, their mana will be affected. Xian run. At this time, Yi Tian looked at the audience and said, Master, the old slave is here. Xian Run immediately stepped out of the line and bowed down.
This situation surprised Morong Jun and Tan Suching, two great friars in Yupu territory who were not familiar with the situation of the Maitreya Palace. Such a great friar who has reached the cultivation level of Yupu territory is willing to be a servant and worship the Lord of Dan.
Even when there are many great friars of Yupu territory in the square-inch spiritual region, it is unique. Moreover, on the Earth Star, the great friar of Yupu territory is absolutely rare and right. "Aunt, what's the situation?" Morong Jun couldn't understand it, so he asked Morong Chantian. Morong Chantian quickly whispered back while listening to Master's troop dispatching arrangement, "The name of this great monk in Yupu territory is Xianrun.
He was accepted as a slave when he transformed the divine realm. Later, Master appointed him as the first law enforcement envoy of the Maitreya Palace, but he always regarded himself as a slave. Later, Master refined a pill for him and promoted him to the present state. Master also promised to promote him to the heavenly palace realm in the future, so Xianrun was loyal to Master and stood in front of Master. He never thinks of himself as a great monk in the Jade and Pu territory.
So it is. The Taoist friends of Dandi really have the ability to help the great friar of Yupu territory enter the heavenly palace? Morong Jun continued to ask. "My master is so powerful and unfathomable that there is nothing impossible." "Well, Master has arranged our battle." Morong Chantian said a few words in a hurry and then stopped talking. After listening to this, Dandi said, "The Taoist friends of Shueihua sect, the Shueihua sect branch and Tiangong branch of our palace follow our palace master to attack from the north of the Fog Sea. The Taoist friends of Shueihua sect are responsible for killing the remaining evils of the Ming nationality overseas, and the rest fight with our palace master in the fog." "Yes." Morong Chantian immediately bowed to answer, with a very respectful attitude. She heard Yi Tian's arrangement very clearly. In this battle, Yi Tian divided his troops in two ways. The first way was led by Xianrun. The leading Beast Division and Taisho Division used the Huathan Stone Defense Zone as a barrier to block the Mingxiu who might break through. With the assistance of Huathan Stone Isolation Belt, the pressure will be relatively small. She was very satisfied that Master took her Shueihua branch as her main attack force. She felt that Master attached importance to Shueihua branch and thought that Shueihua branch was okay. Naturally, she has no opinion. But at this time, Morong Jun arched his hand and said, "I don't know what to say, Taoist friend of Dandi." "It's not right to say it. Morong Taoist friend, open your mouth if you have anything." He also wants to listen to the Taoist friend's advice. Yi Tian nodded with a smile. Morong Jun said, "A few days ago, we had a war with the Ming clan. According to my estimation, under the attack of our coalition forces, only a handful of Ming practitioners can escape the dark fog. It should not need so many people to annihilate the crippled enemy with the fighting power of Shueihua sect. Therefore, Morong Jun asked for a war, and took Elder Tan with half of his disciples to stop the crippled enemy, and Morong Jun took half of his disciples with his friends into the dark fog." Yi Tian pondered and said, "Since Morong Taoist friend asks for war, according to your opinion, Shueihua sect and the Maitreya Palace cooperate to attack the Ming cultivation in the Fog Sea. However, Morong Taoist friend, fighting in the Fog Sea is different from fighting outside. He should close his breath and try not to be attacked by the Ming Qi. Moreover, this time it is a siege of Ming cultivation, and the other party will certainly struggle to death if there is no way back. Yi suggested that Yuanying territory the following disciples don't go into the dark fog. Okay, just follow Dante's arrangement." Morong Junlu agreed as soon as he pondered, but he was a little unconvinced. Because in Shueihua sect, in addition to two great friars in Yupu territory, there are 42 disciples in Huashan territory and 368 disciples in Yuanying territory. If the disciples below Yuanying territory do not enter the dark fog, there will be just over 400 disciples who can participate in this battle. He has seen that the Dante must be kind and worried about the damage of the disciples of Shueihua sect in the war. But now Mingxiu has been surrounded by Mingqi. He is just a disabled soldier, a defeated general and a lost dog. What's terrible? Originally, he wanted to arrange troops evenly. Half of the disciples entered the Fog Sea and the other half stayed outside the dark fog. However, as soon as he saw that there were only a few disciples who could enter the Fog Sea,
he changed his mind and decided to bring all the disciples above Yuanying territory into the Fog Sea. Under the leadership of Tan Suching, the monks below Jindan territory cleared away the surviving enemies who escaped by chance overseas. In the future, Tan Suching, a great monk in Yupu territory, should be foolproof.
Yi Tiandao didn't say any more.
With a wave of his hand, he stepped on the fierce soldier flying sword, took the golden eye divine carving along the edge of the Fog Sea and took an arc route to the north of the Fog Sea. Morong Jun, Tan Suching, Morong Chanshan, Situjuanru and the elders of Shueiyue sect and Tiangong sect followed. This army seems to have few hands, but the real combat power is carried in the magic weapon cave.
It didn't take much time.
Yi Tian had come around the south of the Fog Sea and came to the north half.
Later, Yi Tian arranged his journey all the way.
First, he sent elders of Tiangong division, each of whom was a team of soldiers and horses, every 500 miles as the attack area, responsible for killing from this area to the Dark Fog Center.
An elder is arranged every 500 miles.
When he came to the north, Yi Tian pointed to the dark fog in front of him. I am personally responsible for here. The front of 2,000 miles is pushed out 200 miles.
It is the route of Shueiyue sect's attack. Norongjun always follows Yi Tian. He can hear the arrangements all the way.
Each elder of Washenjing arranged an attack route of 500 li, and he had no opinion. Yi Tian himself took the attack route of 2,000 li, and he also had no opinion. After all, the strength of Dan Di is there. The greater the ability, the greater the responsibility. It seems that it is normal to have an attack range of 1,500 li more than the general disciples of Huashan realm. But why is it that the least one of the other friars in Huashan territory is also responsible for the attack area of 500 li, while the one Shueiyue sect of Nuai University and the sect gate led by the two friars in Yupu territory are only given 200 li? Murongjun said he was not satisfied.
He looked at Yi Tian, Emperor Dan.